personal business during the meeting, please move for a recess. As a reminder to all attendees, the meeting is being streamed live. The camera is located directly in the back of the council chambers above the clock. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cottle?
Here.
Councilmember Grant?
Here.
Councilmember Crafton?
Here.
Councilmember Vlock? Here. Councilmember Rubio is running late. We expect her within the next 10 minutes. You do have a quorum at this time, Madam Mayor. All council members are present, except Councilmember Rubio, who we expect. Council seat C remains open.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilmember Graham, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item of business is approval of the agenda. Are there changes to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. We are now at persons to be heard. It's a time for members of the public to share their views with the council. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issues raised may be taken under advisement by the council or administration. There is no one, so we will close persons to be heard, and we are now at unfinished business. Madam Clerk, please read the item by title.
Thank you. Ordinance serial number 2525, providing for the adoption of the annual budget for fiscal year 2026 and appropriating funds to carry out said budget. There's a main motion to adopt on the floor.
Please note, a motion to adopt is pending on the ordinance. Would the council like to go into a committee of the whole or address budget amendments at this time?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move we enter a committee of the whole for the purpose of discussing the 2026 fiscal year budget.
Is there a second?
Madam Mayor, I'll second the motion.
It's been moved by Councilmember Graham and seconded by Councilmember Crafton to enter committee of the whole. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is adopted. The time is 6:02 p.m. Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton.
Thank you, Mayor. Yesterday, Sarah had so nicely taken all of the questions we had and compiled them into one document. I had some questions on some of those ones. I don't know if the rest of the council does, so I don't know if we just want to go through them one by one and see if we have questions.
Which document are you looking at?
This is the one we got from the clerk yesterday. It has purple writing at the top, says city council budget questions and
Looks like this,
responses.
too.
Has a little sticker at the top too. No.
Through the chair to the council, would you like to take a brief? We're happy to make more copies if anybody doesn't have their copy or.
Make sure I'm looking at the right piece of paper. The mayor showed me one thing, you're showing me something else.
Ain't this it?
No.
So this is what I'm thinking
Sorry.
we're talking
Yep.
about. Okay.
I showed you the wrong thing, Stu. My apologies.
We got it yesterday when we got here.
Does anybody want me to copy?
Do we want to take a brief at ease?
Or at ease? Yeah, we're gonna make more copies.
Okay. We will take an at ease for Sarah to make copies.
Bigger, better rounds. Italian. So the lemon ones.
Oh, of course.
That's right. Why not ease just for you?
Look at these, to make copies. Only Ms.
Don't
Roll.
ask how many rules I broke to get here. Or stop sign. Or the cops might be after me.
Alina,
Yeah, I know some people, know some people. You're okay.
Okay.
you
We'll make them more copies.
know what to look
I was wondering why Stu was outside. I thought that was awkward, but I was running.
for. Who's waiting for you?
Yeah. Thought we were moving the meeting outside.
Run over during the city council meeting, that'd be workman's comp, so.
I don't think we get that.
You get paid. You get paid.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, there is some taken out of that.
Comp doesn't pay worth a darn. Don't be going for comp. I used to tell my employees that all the time. It's not worth it.
Sarah's just making copies.
I'm gonna start sweating. You guys are all so quiet.
Oh, don't worry, the stuff's fixing to hit the fan anytime.
Saving our voice.
Your city council dad joke.
Don't get me started.
Oh, you might want to go to your house in Georgia.
Smiling?
It might lighten the mood. Oh, really?
My favorite one to give her. It took her a while to get probably was
3 more years.
watch something. I'm like, yeah, we can watch that.
Yes, yeah. No, it's not long.
It took her a while, but
I just have a little sabbatical.
and so because it'd be later at night, you know. Like,
Yeah.
you could watch. No, it's Dad. Oh,
No, go.
Genius. Papa, I'm a genius. I said, oh, I am so glad that you would completely understand. Geniuses need a lot of sleep, so you're gonna have to go to bed. I'm so glad you understand that.
Yes.
funny. My daughter sleeps the worst thing on for her.
She'll love it when she's older.
I know, but my son, he'll admit, son, I'm tired.
Okay.
Go to bed.
And number 3, if he was tired, didn't matter if we were in the middle of the store, he lay down on the floor to sleep. And he was good. His age, and trying to pick him up and throw him into a shopping cart and stuff was not fun.
We went camping on Friday night and Saturday, and we were driving home. We were coming home Saturday night, so we go to church on Sunday. And he goes, "Papa, we're not done playing," because we were leaving like at just 8 by the barbecue and stuff like that. As soon as we get in the truck, we get everything packed up, the wheelers and everything. We're driving out, and we just get onto the highway, and he always wants to use the cell phone to see the map, so we can watch the arrow to go home.
That's fun.
And so I hand that to him, and we're driving home, and he's asleep like less than 1 minute after we get off the
Kathy,
highway.
17.
And we're only in the river over there, so I mean, we're camping very close. And so I pulled the phone out of his hand. We get home, carried him into bed, put him in bed, take his clothes down, put him
I just said, that's what I just flipped to the page to see how many.
I guess he was tired.
We're on 30.
34. I would look at them because I tried to grab like some of the ones that I could see consensus. I was like, I'll just knock this out.
I would just have to go.
Fair. Don't leave this one down.
Exactly.
Does anyone up here? Is this,
I have it right, is this it?
One.
I think
I got everything.
and there's more coming.
I've got one.
You got one?
I liked everything, keep it in my bag for a while.
It's on the kid.
Anybody else see one?
Okay, I don't need this.
No, she's back.
We're back on the record at 6:11, and Councilman Rubio has joined us at 6:06.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. Would you mind just walking us through each of the numbers here in case the other council members have questions instead of trying to jump around?
Okay,
I feel like it'd make it easy for everybody here.
okay. We are on page 1. Question 1, Riley Avenue.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. So, and a lot of this just might be clarifying questions for right now, Cassie. It sounds like we ended up with 2 accounts somehow for this one, and basically we just ended up combining the accounts into one. And so, oh, I should have flipped to it, sorry. This was Riley's. So, we're gonna use the new Riley account, and there's $100,000 in it.
Correct.
Okay. And then, question for Eric, if I could, Mayor.
Okay.
Just to remember where we were at with this one, this is matching funds for building out that pathway as Riley Avenue gets paved in its entirety. So did we have an idea of what that match was gonna be? I can't remember if we did or not.
So this idea started before the MPO, and so now that we have the MPO, these funds would be matching as we develop the project with them. They're a little slower, of course, the MPO is now, so we have to go through that permitting process, so I don't think we'll have any movement on it this fiscal year.
What was that last part? You don't think?
I don't think the MPO will be ready to expend these this fiscal year. With the way their project review has been going, it's slower than I thought it'd be.
And so if there was no $150,000 additional, that would have essentially no effect.
Yeah, we could talk about it when I know more about the timeline for the MPO to build projects.
So Eric, are you saying that we might have to come back to council?
Yes,
Okay,
once I have a timeline on how they want us to show the match to run it through the MPO.
But if anything, can say, hey, look, we've already started it, we got $100,000 here. Really, our point is, we don't know what the match is. I mean, I see we're looking at, $750,000 is what we'd be putting on this over the next couple of years. But, I mean, if we kept the 150, it's really just saying, hey, let's, instead of doing one chunk, we're gonna do this in smaller increments, really. Is
Yes, we
kind of
can do
what
that.
we'd be, yeah. Gotcha. Thank you, Eric.
okay. Moving on to question number 2, technology replacement. And Steve, the IT manager, has answered all of that. Moving on to number 3, the railroad crossing.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. And this one, it continues on page 2 for the council and everybody following along. I mostly just wanted to clarify numbers here, Cassie. So currently it's supposed to be at 117,729. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. And then if we were to add the 20, that would bring us to the 137.
Correct.
And did we foresee any big projects with this one, or was this one of the ones where we could say, hey, we might not need this extra 20 this year?
Because Glenwood is broken out, I think that we don't need the extra 20 this year. I think with the bills we've seen, as you can see in the history, fiscal 25 has been more than the last few years, but they haven't been spending 117,000 one year.
Thank you.
Number 4.
Madam Mayor,
Oh, sorry, Mr. Gray.
so given the chart on page 2 of the document that we've been talking about, and you can see the balance continues to grow and continues to grow and continues to grow, with the exception of 25, where there were some very significant numbers there. I don't really see a need to add anything to that, because even if, essentially we have 3 years worth of money in the bank there, so to speak. So I'm not, other than the fact that we always add money to it, I'm not seeing why we're adding money to it. Am I missing something? I mean, it would take an act of God for the railroad to come out and spend $115,000 in a year on our few railroad crossings. Am I missing something? I mean, when they come out and they fix the railroad crossing due to high winds there on the Parks Highway, I think that's usually less than $10,000. And they do that twice a year. And then Snyder Crossing, they usually look at once a year for just a couple $1,000s. Glenwood, last year they did a pretty significant upgrade, which they absorbed all the cost on that. I just don't see any reason to put an additional $20,000 in there. I do see the reason for having it continue forward to 27 through 30, that 5-year plan, but I just don't see any reason for putting it in there this year.
Eric, do you know of any plans the railroad has?
Other than planning for Glenwood, no, I think the risk is if one of the crossings has a major incident where someone crashes and takes them all out, and that's unlikely. And I don't know how much that would cost, but I think that's probably the highest risk, is if there's a major accident that they lose the whole system and come back to us. But I think we would have time to fund it accordingly based on our agreement if that were to happen. So I think pausing the funding this year makes sense.
Thank you. Okay, number 4, grant funding balance.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Crafton.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is basically the interconnect funds that we were talking about the other day. And part of the conversation we were having was a lot of these funds could be used for basically rebuilding our infrastructure. And I think, I'm looking at sewer, not water. This was the Herman Road water main extension, the new tower at Herman Road. These funds could be used for. So it looks like we've spent just shy of 400,000, but there's another 3.9 encumbered. What's it currently being encumbered by right now? Do we know?
It's currently being encumbered by 2 RFPs, one for the ARPA interconnect for roughly 1.8 million, and then the other one is it was the old Matt Booster Station, but is now the Herman Water Tower Road main line, and that is 2.1 million. Those both went out to RFP late last fall, and both were awarded through an AM sometime in there. And so that we had a requirement that all funds for the ARPA funds through the Mat-Su Borough had to be encumbered by October 31st of 2024. And so that was the deadline to be met for that. And then all work has to be completed by October 31st of 2025.
Mayor, if I could continue. So the 1.8 is for the design work of the interconnect project.
Correct.
But we haven't decided which route we're going. I mean, honestly, in my eyes, the $40 million project isn't even on the table because we're trying to connect them, so we want to do it at the least cost possible. But I'm kind of curious, how that is, and then also, let's start with that then, since Eric has something to say.
Yeah, so like we discussed during the presentation with HDL, and then Manager Brown got up and talked about it too. That funding is to go as far as possible with the design planning and come up with the alternatives for the future funding of the project. So we'll be hitting benchmarks with design reports to the council as we weigh the benefits of both alignments. And then eventually a decision's gonna need to be made to add more money for design and pick the alignment that we wanna go in. And then as Cassie said, the other funding has been changed to the Herman Road because of its immediate need. And then the council approved the $2 million from the state, which was, as Mr. Brown explained, kind of a match and a nod to the importance of the project. That hasn't been attached to any PO yet. So those funds are earmarked for the Herman Road project, but they haven't been, that's why they're not encumbered. They're not attached to a contract at the moment.
The 5.5 or the 2 point, sorry, what'd you say, Cassie? 2.1. The 2.1 for Old Matt, which is now Herman Road.
That's encumbered.
Okay. And that is, what does that get us exactly?
That gets us as much of the connection as we can build. Well, we're going to quantify that. That gets us the main line that gets up to the Herman Road project, and we had talked about $1,000 a linear foot, all said and done, for water line. So it's going to take most of the funding to get up to the new water tower
The new
location.
tower. So
Yeah.
this is going from the Parks Highway to the tower itself, down Herman Road.
In general, it's probably going more from Tyson Circle up to the tower.
Okay.
Eventually, we have to connect to the parks as well.
Okay. And so the 5.5 could be used to cover the cost for the 1.25, technically 2.5, 3 million that you're looking for the new tower, and then it would still be utilized for some of the water main extension. We'd still have money left over after that. Not to mention, we still already have 1.7 sitting there for the Herman Tower that we've already appropriated and hasn't been spent. So I mean, this should basically get those two projects done. It should build the tower and connect us to the Parks Highway, or connect that tower to the Parks Highway. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, we feel it'll get us close. We'll have a very detailed breakdown on how we're going to use the funding, and if there ends up being a shortfall in the estimate, we'll know that
And I mean,
soon.
we've already appropriated money, so I mean, you have
Yep.
technically $2.7 million that have already been allocated for these projects still sitting in account. So I mean, there's more than enough at this point. So
Right.
basically, for those two projects, we probably shouldn't. There's not really a need to appropriate more this year.
Right. We can come back with the detailed numbers and explain how far the funding gets us and explain the shortfall if we find that.
Awesome, thank you.
Eric, is there in this 9.4, is there money there to drill the well?
Yes, that was part of the plan with the Herman Road water tower money.
And build the tower?
Yes.
Okay. Elena?
Madam Mayor. So on that Herman main line, the water line extension from the tower, we don't have a route for that yet? Like, that's still up for?
We have a preliminary layout for it. We were trying to figure out if we had to stay out of the right of way because of DOT's project and go inside of a utility easement. So we've been coordinating with the borough and DOT about their project to make sure we can stay ahead of them. We generally know within 20 feet if it's going to be in the road or if it's going to be in an alignment outside the road, but we know where it's going to go.
And then we know the linear feet of that, how
Right.
far that's gonna go, so we have a total cost of what that should look like.
Yes, we have been forecasting the connection at Tyson. What we will end up needing to do is come back from Tyson down to the parks. But that's the ultimate build out for that main line that connects because of all the development's gonna happen there. We have to get from Tyson up to the new location for the hotel that's gonna be breaking ground next month.
And we have that in this?
Correct.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, it brings up another question, talking about the hotel there. Are they covering any of the cost of that water line being run there? Because, I mean, it sounds like it's not necessarily for them, but a lot of it's for them. Are we having them cover anything or no?
They'll have the regular connection fees that we have for services. But we're designing for service for the whole facility, so.
Okay, moving on to number 5 on page 3, septic tank replacements.
Madam Mayor, through the mayor to Eric. Eric, on this report, for each of the tanks, there's a T. It either says engineering or then it says septic tank pumping, sewer collection. Will you just explain the difference with all of those? Like the last page on it, especially has some that are a little different.
Yeah, so what you're seeing is some categories that we apply to the different work orders. And so, at the very last work order, 23351 is actually a duplicate work order. And so that's why it's been completed. It has, the team members on it that inspected it, so. You're just seeing some of the organizational structure within the work orders. When they are still in the design phase and we're piecing together our work plan, they remain with the engineering team. And then when they go into construction, we add the sewer collections team because they're going to be doing the inspections and they're assimilating that asset. So you see kind of a progression from us setting up the project and getting it to operations.
Okay, so most of these are just in the engineering stage, correct?
Correct. These are the ones that are still waiting to be built this summer.
So all of these tanks you expect to work on this summer?
Correct.
Okay, well, I do have a question then, because my tank is on there, and not this past winter, but the winter before when we had all the heavy snow. And you guys had to keep coming out because my alarms kept going off in the middle of the night and I had to wade through the 4 feet of snow to shut it off, in the dark. But I was told, it was actually a malfunction in the control box and it was burning out pumps. And I asked about my tank, if my tank was gonna have to be replaced, and I was told, no, my tank was great and wouldn't have to be replaced. So I'm just surprised to see it on this list.
Okay. I'll figure out
If
why
you would-
that's changed. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and because I would have thought that if mine had to be replaced, that probably might have been a couple others in my neighborhood that would too, and I wasn't seeing that, so I was just kind of wondering about that.
Yeah,
But-
definitely. This came from a batch of inspections we had done. And so then they were simulating the inspector's reports into different categories. So I'll find out what brought yours back to the top.
Okay, well, like I say, that you don't have to replant my grass. It's too steep to mow. I'm tired of mowing it, so. But thank you for clarifying what some of these, the different T's on here meant. I appreciate that.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. So when we were talking about septic tanks, when I'm on page 260, by the way, that's where the actual is in capital expenditures. We'd asked for another $775,000, and a lot of that had to do, it sounded like, in going forward for $800,000 was because of the additional work needing to be done. Is that included in these estimates here or no? Because so it sounds pretty low. Because I added up these ones, and it might be off by 1,000 too, but these estimates here run at about $182,000 right now.
These are the funded backlog that we still have to replace. So the forecast that you see is us doing the math on the number of failures we've seen with the 900 tanks that we have. So it partially serves so that we all keep in mind that they're out there failing and we have to go back and replace them. So we're naturally going to hit a limit that we can do every year.
Right.
But we do have the valley has lots of companies that can install septic tanks. I think our limit's gonna be managing those so that because we're gonna be the interface between the customer and the tank installer. And we're gonna hit a critical mass on just being able to keep up on top of that and giving them the support they need, since we're doing it as a third party for them and impacting those neighbors. So there's gonna be an outstanding cost, of course, because of the size of our system, but we are probably gonna hit a limit lower than that, just in the personnel capital we have to manage those projects effectively and not have a bunch of impacted neighbors. We wanna do a good job when we do it.
If I could continue, Mayor, maybe I didn't ask my question correctly. So when we had talked about this, the cost of each replacement, you said, was coming up in the $80,000 number because of all of the landscaping, potential asphalt and everything. These are $20,000 and $30,000 projects. So is that additional work not included here yet?
So the 80,000 was for 2 tanks.
Okay.
There was a 35 and change and almost a 45 and change. So those 2 tanks were more expensive. What we have in these estimates that we've included is a rough number based on its size. So there are going to be nuances if we get to individual properties that have more impacts from the disturbance. So they could be more expensive based on what's on top of them, especially if you have to pave them. This initial review was based on their size and and just an entry-level estimate on what the impacts would be. So when they go out for a contract, then we'll know the full cost. So they're just a forecasting number at this point.
And another question, if I could, Mayor. So you're mentioning the limitation of how many we're doing, and I think it was 8 on this list, if I counted correctly, maybe 9. What's causing our limit of doing this? Because I mean, being in real estate, I mean, I see septic tanks replaced left, right, up, down, all over. I mean, surprisingly, these things get knocked out fairly quickly. These guys are pretty good with them. What's the reason why we're not knocking out 15 of these in a summer type of thing? Especially if we know where they are, what's going on with them, you know, if you don't mind me asking, what's the reason why we're not able to knock out more of them?
Yeah, so I thought we would be able to do them faster. Our process is a bit cumbersome. In the example that you relayed, so you'll typically see either the homeowners having it replaced themselves, so they're acting as their own project manager and they select the contractor and talk through what they want it to look like when they're done. Or someone's selling a house and has to do it before the buyer gets it, and so they handle that and it gets done. We're in a situation where we'll be coming to a homeowner and saying, we need to do this. It's kind of out of the blue to you, and then there are expectations for quality, having it finished, time-wise. It takes a little bit more care than if the homeowner initiates it themselves and has that control. So we want to make sure that we go in with the contractor understanding what the expectations are for how it's finished, and if there's extra work that needs to happen, then that's going to be compensated for the contractor. And then we need to have the appropriate approval to enter in and replace it. So we had some start last fall that got hung up, those expensive ones. And so we're trying to circle back and have a process that we can complete again and again without opening ourselves up to delays or risk or frustrated customers.
And we're hoping those 280,000s were like one-offs, right?
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to number 6, and that was sent to Holly, am I correct?
Through the chair to the body of my office, Deputy Clerk sent, when I was out of town, sent an email to Ms. Wells. I haven't heard back, but I'm not sure who within the administration. I don't know, Eric, do you want to ping Holly, or I don't know who the project lead is on that.
I know Cassie and I had talked about
HR,
it.
sorry.
And there was a response. I think Cassie had gone to the Department of, I don't remember what department it was.
I had gone out and done some research of myself. There is an actual state and local government ADA primer, which has about a 28-page document that talks about what our responsibilities as public entities and things of that nature, and how it impacts us in regards to how all that works. And so I had forwarded that part on, and then the other part that was stated in there is that there is no grandfather clause with ADA with regards to public entities. It is whether or not you should alter or do something of that nature, and then it is a requirement for us to update to the 2010 ADA standards of that year for that building. And so that was a variable that I believe I forwarded on to Lisa and Eric and myself is when I answered it, but I don't know where it went after that. I apologize, I don't.
Mr. Graham, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Through the chair to the body, we will follow up tomorrow with the attorney and I'll report back.
And I think that the key word that Cassie mentioned there is when we do an update to the building or to a portion of the building, then we need to bring that building or portion of the building into ADA standards. There's no sweeping mandate to update everything to ADA standards. We are who we are what we are, and if we decide to make improvements, then we need to make sure that they're to the current code, which for ADA I think was 2010, or it was quite a while ago, but as you can tell, we haven't done a whole lot of major upgrades to this building. But we have added ramps, we have added assisted door opening things there, but we haven't added lifts and things like that we would need to add if we did some significant upgrades.
So, through the chair to the council, did you want me to still follow up with the attorney, or are we?
I would appreciate the legal
Okay.
opinion, just so we can get a clarification. That's what we hired her for, right?
Okay, number 7, street light replacement.
So I have an answer for that. I didn't get to Deputy Clerk before the cutoff. So talking with my street supervisor, this was the last request for funding because we have one more street light that is expensive to get to because of where it is with high tension power lines. And then the plan was to purchase backup lights so that we have them on the shelf when they get knocked down and switch them out. So this is the last bit that we need to finish the streetlights.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. So, with that in mind now, Eric, according to page 248 here, there's 2811 in the account, and you're asking for 25. And I know the conversation we had last time was cutting it back to the 15, so removing 10. Is 15 still going to be enough at that point?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you. So Eric, the one street light that's remaining, the high sodium street light, I'm guessing high sodium is what we're talking about. That one high sodium street light is going to be expensive to replace because of its location, and like you mentioned, high tension power lines and a lot of variables that you don't have with your normal pole sticking up next to the road there. But the whole idea behind this project is to become more energy efficient and more cost efficient. If replacing that one light is going to cost us 30 times what we would ever save by replacing that, then it really doesn't make sense unless that light is at end of life. It's physical end of life, as opposed to just wanting to say, well, we've completed this project and we've gone completely to LEDs. So where are we on that? Do you know, would be question number one, on that light. Do you know where we are on that light? Are we 10 years away from end of life, or are we?
Yeah, I don't know the lifespan of it. I can see if we know how old it is.
Because I'm all for energy efficiency and, and the advantages that LEDs offer, lower maintenance and that sort of thing, but, it's a cost benefit sort of thing. And right now I'm seeing a whole lot of cost and not a whole lot of benefit for that one light, but my opinion could certainly be changed with a little fact. So thank you.
I'll look into it.
Okay. Number 8, train depot landscaping.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. Our former council member, Mr. Johnson, had brought up a really good point whenever he was here last time about the off-road vehicles that like to utilize this area. And I don't know if you've driven back there recently, but they tear up that area back there, and I bet you Mr. Graham doesn't like it at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're probably back there too. Do we have a capability to block some of this off, large boulders or something? Something we could do to try and help besides, because we can spend $122,000 on landscaping, but if somebody's gonna drive through there tomorrow and tear it back up, it's pointless.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson had asked for boulders, and we've been collecting them at the airport, and so we'll be bringing them out. Other than excluding the vehicles in that grassy area on both sides of the drainage areas, we can do that with rocks. The main landscaping is, of course, the sand areas on between the depot and the railroad. So, and we have rocks planned there too, because the railroad wants vehicle blocking. So,
If I could follow up one more time, Mayor.
Yes.
Big boulders like that usually cost to move them. Is that included in here at all?
we are, because they're ours, we've been bringing them over when we have time. So we're stockpiling our own rocks. They'll have to be placed as part of the landscaping, but we've been just kind of using our time available to move the rocks over, and they're being staged just past the project.
Okay, so we've just kind of, when we have a chance, dropping boulders off. Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, ma'am. Just so I'm clear here, exactly which account are we looking at? I mean, because we're looking at one big CIP item that just says train depot. And then we talked about just doing the landscaping and not doing everything else. So are we still on page 249 here at the bottom of the page? Or are we moving that 515,000 to 125,000 more or less? What? I'm unclear at this point.
So the question was, what do we need to do to finish the, to make a good dent in the landscaping? And
Right.
so in the answer, we'd like to screen the topsoil that we salvaged from the airport. We're estimating that's a little over 22,000. And then we need to place that soil and seed it, and we're estimating that's a little over 87,000. And then we want to salvage those flag poles that are going to be taken down for the Talkeeton extension, and that's a little over 11,000. So I guess we're proposing a reduction from the 515 to a little over 121,000 to get us to that point.
Okay, that helps. And just to get a visual in my mind, we're landscaping between the concrete. We're not landscaping that big area that we cleared out for a future parking lot and so on and so forth. We're just landscaping between the concrete walkways. Is that correct?
Yes, that is true. And then there'll be, it'll come out to a reasonable stopping point at the fringes. The overflow parking lot's not paved, of course. We don't want to contaminate that D1 with topsoil, so it'll stop at a reasonable point until we make that hardscape and then feather it in. And there'll probably be, I believe we forecast some material on the other side of the street where visitors park, where the chamber parks, for those bulbs that are in there, so that there's some planting. We salvaged some trees from another project, and so we want to plant those too. So.
Okay, and then the other part of that, obviously we're doing the landscaping there, and Councilman Crafton brought up the boulders. So do we need to add 10,000 feet or $10,000 for, ballers or boulders?
To place the boulders,
Right.
that would get us a long ways.
So
We
if
supply them and have them be placed. Yeah.
So if we put that at $135,000, that would be
We can get a long ways with that.
probably the right number. Thank you, sir.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. I know it's not debate, I just thought I'd give you a heads up, Mr. Graham. I cut this down, I put in an amendment to cut it down to 200, just because we didn't have the number yet. I mean, it's a little bit higher, but I feel like that gave them the leeway that
And
they
now
were
we
going
have a
for.
number, so,
Yeah.
so you'll see an amendment reflecting that.
Okay, number 9, Bumpus softball facility.
Madam Mayor, I have a question on that one if I can.
Sure.
So when we stopped the project, last year at some point, we were gonna look at the plans for the train depot because we were gonna revise it, take another look at it. I haven't seen the revised plan. Did we do that and I missed it?
No, we don't have a consultant on to come up with a new plan yet, so we
But it-
paused and then now we're talking about finishing landscaping.
But isn't landscaping part of the plan?
My understanding, the plan was the new shelters and paving the next parking lot, that sort of expansion.
So that set of plans that we do have, it didn't have landscaping included in it?
It had a layout for landscaping so that the railroad could see what we were talking about, but it didn't have the funding to complete it. And so that's when the plan stopped, was the funding was used up and we hadn't come back because we didn't plan.
So we don't have a design of what landscaping is gonna look like, are we just gonna throw boulders everywhere to try to stop four-wheelers and plant grass? Like, I'm confused, but like a plan is what we follow when we do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so there'll be exclusion boulders and then there'll be grass and then some trees that we salvaged kind of away from the clear zone that the railroad wants.
So you do have a plan?
Yes, it's the same contract that went out to do the work. So we had a contractor out there that built it, they've been building it to that plan that went through the contract that was in the AM. But I can resend it.
Yeah, can we resend it just to see it? I just wanna make sure that, like I said, we have these boulders, I'm all for it, but at the same time, like, we gotta look at that to see if it's what we want for that area. I feel like, as a whole, to be able to decide that for sure. I'm all for landscaping and keeping the four-wheelers, the ruts are huge, cause they did it in the springtime when, so you're gonna have to run a dozer through there to redo all of it. Clearly, we gotta lay topsoil down and seed, I get that, but at the same time, you can't really do it without a plan, and I just would love to see that. Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving on to number 9, Bumpus softball facility.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. Eric, could you just, I think I understand the second one where it looks like the parking lot. That one makes sense. It looks like you're just showing numbers of how much square footage is there. But the one before that, could you talk me through that? I'm just not fully understanding it, kind of what I'm looking at here.
Sure, yeah, so that page you're looking at has the clubhouse kind of in the upper right-hand quadrant. And so you can see how the fields are aligned. What happens right now is the area to the left of the clubhouse, all around the clubhouse basically floods every year. So it's ankle deep water or more, and it can end up going right up to the door of the concessions building. And so we have a plan to work with the softball group to get access and grade it so that we bring the water out and around and send it in 2 directions. It'll go to the right on the sheet and to the left. And then a couple things that are highlighted are, we're just denoting where the irrigation lines are. So there's a blue dash line that talks about that. And then there's some underground detention basins that we have. So they basically, what we see is the ground freezes solid and then the water on the surface has nowhere to go, but underneath the ice it's still very permeable. So this is a inexpensive plastic structure that you bury, and then you can open it up in the spring when everything else won't percolate, and then the groundwater can go in. So we're using on-site detention and then grading it so that it drains away naturally as a backup.
Okay, and I'm trying to remember the dollars, sorry. The dollars that we're putting forward is, the plan is to do this and the paving. And then from there, I think we discussed the master plan that the association's working on right now.
Correct.
And we said, hey, we'll get this done. Once you get us the plan, then we can have a conversation, but this is all we want to do for right now, because these are obviously immediate needs that need to be addressed.
Yeah, especially on the drainage, it limits when they can get started. This spring's unusual, but normally they're waiting for the lake to recede so they can get out there. And so Mr. Fleckenstein had talked about that. Their earliest games are usually impacted by these drainage issues. So we've been working with them to figure out how to do it as cost effective as possible. And then the second drawing is a look at using the existing cleared space and paving it for access.
Sounds good. That helps clarify it for me. Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Excuse me. Eric, when I look at the CIP for the Bumpus softball facility, unless I'm missing it, I don't see paving in the CIP. Am I just like missing a line here somewhere? I just can't get my eyes on it. It's got for grading and drainage, but I don't see paving in here anywhere.
I guess we refer to parking. That's what we're talking about. The parking improvements are the paving, and the drainage is what we were talking about with under drains.
So the funding you're asking for does include paving?
It does, correct.
Okay, and then on your conceptual drawing here, can you just kind of walk me through where you're going to pave, what your plan is?
Yeah, so this one's a little more complicated. You see the red arrows, those are denoting access. And then they're showing, the green lines are showing representative stripes. They won't be striped, of course, but how we would lay out the spacing so that there's drive lanes between them. And so we're forecasting 50 spots along the fence, 112 spots along the middle double, as we call it, 58 spots in the outer, so it'd be 200 spots.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Gray?
So to stay on the question of paving, of course, you know, the last of these fold-out pages talks about paving the entire parking lot to provide those 200 spots at $200,000. And then coming back to what the staff report said was, originally I think we had just talked about paving the driving lanes for emergency access. So perhaps I missed it. So is the paving the parking lot, the $200,000, is it part of this $300,000 request, or is it a future dream item that we're not even putting on FY27, 28, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll need to double check. I don't want to get the answer incorrect.
To me, looking at this number, it doesn't seem like that $200,000 is there. But if you're saying it is,
Yeah,
then that would be the expectation that we would hold for you. So yeah, if you could find that out, that'd be great.
I will, definitely.
Okay, moving on to page 4, number,
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
oh, sorry.
Sorry, that's okay. So the question really is, what you probably should ask is, what is the cost of the drainage? Because we should know that, correct?
Cost of the drainage portion, we're forecasting about 72,000 for that. It's in a note on the drainage section.
72,300.
He's saying he feels like that number's low. Mr. Graham, are you saying that $200,000 number feels low for what's getting done for the paving portion of it?
I'm just not seeing it broken out, anywhere, you know, much like, Councilperson Rubio was just asking, how much is the drainage
I mean, it's on the
issue? And then how much are the emergency lanes, issue? I mean, is this number that we're talking about, if we're gonna pave those lanes in there, that means we're gonna come and put in a road bed, and then do that. And just putting the drive lanes in there, it looks to me like it would exceed that $300,000 that's being asked for. But that's why I would like to know, you know, from the horse's mouth, so to speak, what that includes.
Because, I mean, the 2 pages I have cost estimates on there, so that's why I'm.
Right, and that's exactly why I asked, because this one says pave the entire parking lot for $200,000, but the staff report doesn't talk about paving the entire parking lot.
Gotcha, and that's what Kathy was
Right.
bringing up too.
Right.
That's what I had asked initially, when I was trying to figure out the e-grace lines of what does that look like for the emergency vehicles? That's what, I was like, that's not the entire parking lot. But it says here in the entire parking lot.
Right.
There's no way we can do that for
And striping it too. is what
And
it
striping,
says.
yeah, there's no way that's all included. That's what I was, all of us are a little bit confused of how it's worded from here to here, I think.
Right.
And so all we were trying to do is figure out the difference for the drainage, being that now it's around 72.
If you will read, it says pave the entire parking lot full strips. There's not a break between the lot and full. So it's not saying that it's paving the entire parking lot. It's paving the entire parking lot full strips.
Yeah, the red ones.
That does what it is what it says, but I will get clarification, because
Thank you.
when we talked about it with staff, it was like Jim Creek, where the driving surface is paved and the parking is gravel.
Right.
And that's what my intention was with this, but the wording in that note confuses me too, so.
Okay, I'm on
We'll
the same
verify
page
that.
now.
So it's just for
Yeah.
strips.
Okay, we are going on to page 4, number 10, road grader.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. So the ask is $450,000 to purchase a new grader. Oh, where'd my paper go? And you're saying it would cost, if we didn't purchase one, and we spent about 400 hours per year, which if we did 8,200 hours dating back to 97, it's 28 years. I calculated a hair under 300 hours is what we've been averaging with it. But again, we're calling it high, say we have some bad years, we're estimating 52,000. Otherwise, you're saying the greater, what we got out of its use was 1.1 million, basically.
It's just a ratio based on the hourly rate and how many hours our grader has.
So you're saying so let's spend the 450 basically, because the last one saved us 1.1 million in various other fees.
Yeah, it paid for itself over its
Right.
lifetime is what I was just trying to denote.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Number 11. Fiscal year 24, what has been the percentage increase in wages for city employees?
Madam Mayor, if I could back up to the road grader for just a minute. This is the only road grader we have in our fleet. Is
No,
that correct?
it is not. It would be one of 3.
And are the 3 used essentially about the same amount, roughly? I mean, you don't
Yeah,
say, well, we're gonna, plow the street, so let's send the shiny one out there. That's not, we just do whatever's necessary.
well, there are definitely nuances on the oldest one that this replaces, so there's less operators that run that old one that has 8,800 hours on it, so it would move, this would become the new one, The new one would become the second, and then the third one would be the emergency backup. So this would bump the oldest one out of the emergency backup status.
And then this one would go to auction.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Rubio.
Just keep in mind, guys, on a piece of equipment, there is operating and idle hours. So even though there's 8,800 hours on this grader, how much of that is idle hours? Can we get that number?
I don't think it's new enough to give us idle hours. I think it's just an analog hour meter.
It's broken down.
Yeah.
That I know of, but we can check.
I can get mileage. I think it probably has both.
Yeah, check on that, thank you.
Okay, now, number 11.
It's the question, not a page.
So, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
so, 8.46%. Cassie, if you could remind me of steps when a person goes from, step 3 to step 4, is that a given percentage that that step increase is, and then on top of that, we add the cost of living or CPI?
Correct. So if you turn to this page, it's right after the work orders for the septic tanks. This will tell you what the current FY26 budget is based off of per their CBAs. So Local 302, they have a CBA condition that they have a minimum of 2%. They have a maximum of 3.5%. And so they only received a 3.5%, even though that 3-year CPI was 3.96%. The percentage between their steps is 3.2%, and then the subtotal is 6.7, and then the benefits on top of that is roughly 2%. Theirs is higher, it's sitting at 8.78%. Local 341 receives, they do have a minimum and maximum in their CBA agreement currently. Theirs is 2% to 4%. And their percentages run from step 1 to 8 is 2.5, 9 to 13 is 2.25, and then that subtotals out to 6.46 to 6.21, 2% to 1.93, which is 8.46 or 7.14. WPDA also received the same at 3.96, along with non-reps at 3.96. I will also mention that we do have individuals that are sitting at step 13, and once they max out, they only receive the 3-year CPI. They don't receive anything else. So their benefits would only be at the 3.96 and then 2%, or actually 1.93% of their benefits on top of that.
And then Local 302 has a higher average percentage between steps. Is that an average percentage or is it a fixed percentage?
It's a fixed percentage of 3.2.
And since theirs is higher and we're in contract negotiations now with WPDEA, are we gonna expect them to go, look, we're giving these guys 3.2, we need 3.2? I'm no genius here, but when I'm doing the same job as my neighbor and he's getting paid, 78 cents an hour or more, are we low here? That's what I'm asking. Should we be looking at 3.2 instead of 2.25? That's a significant difference.
Correct. But they also took their reduction on their CPI. They're not receiving the high CPI. Last year, they took a really big hit when we had a 4.84% CPI. They only got the 3.5. So they're taking it through their steps instead of receiving it through their 3 years average CPI. That is the difference, but I can't comment on whether or not, with regards to our current negotiations with WPDA, I would have to be in executive session for that, as for an update, just because of the matter of it is.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Cassie, could you kind of tell us who Local 302 is, Local 341 is, and of course we know WPD, but can you tell us?
So Local 302 covers your majority of your public works employees. So it's all of your, it's gonna be your road crew, your parks, properties, your water, and your sewer are gonna be all covered by that, and airport, which he actually covered between roads and the airport. 341 is all the Menard Center employees,
The what?
the Menard Center employees. And then WPDA will cover your, obviously, the whole entire police department, along with their administration and administrative assistants, IT techs, and then your, up at the dispatch center at MACCOM, you're gonna have all the dispatchers, dispatch supervisors, call takers, and their administrative assistant and IT techs. Oh, and also code compliance. And 302 has a mechanic that is up at WPDA. So they're the only one that has kind of a dual union running up there, one individual.
Okay, thank you. So even if their percentage between steps is different, they're totally different jobs, correct? So they might not be comparing with each other because totally different job classifications. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Correct.
Okay,
Madam Mayor, can I answer Ms. Rubio's question previous about the grader? So
absolutely.
I pinged the road supervisor, and he confirmed that that Champion grader only has an hour meter. It doesn't have idle, and it doesn't have a mileage meter.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we are moving on to number 12, GIS.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, getting back to the page here. 247, if you wanted to hop to it. So Cassie, to clarify here, our book says we had a current of 122,780, but it's supposed to be 172,780. Perfect. And then if we added, we would bring it to 222, which I think we talked about saying we could probably skip this year. And then the other question I had around this was, so that it sounded like there's some confusion with the accounts, and that's why you clarified it. That MPO account, so that's the only time any money's ever gone into that, was that one time, and nothing's ever come out since then?
Correct. It was appropriated in 2024, 50,000. We just received our, is it membership dues, I believe is what they call it. And so that was invoiced at us for $45,490. So it currently has a remaining balance of $4,510. If no other invoices are received, and once we're done, then it will revert itself back into the fund balance.
Are we gonna have future funding of this? Cause I remember looking back at it once I learned, and there's consistent membership dues.
Yes, there are. There's a ratio. So this large sum was to get the MPO started, and so the membership dues will be less than 10,000 a year. It'll be based on a formula based on our population as a whole of the MPO.
And is this gonna live in the capital expenditures, or are we gonna move this into an operating somewhere?
It will turn into operating as long as we don't have any kind of funding that comes from the MPO. I don't know how, if that decision's kind of been made. I don't know
Yeah, I think it's
all the details of it yet.
I think it'll be one-way street. We'll have our membership dues, and then if we get projects nominated through the MPO, then we'll have match that we have to bring to those through the regular process.
Those are different. I mean, that's saying, hey, this is a project, whereas, you know, this line item pays for the membership dues, completely two different, separate
Correct.
things. Cool.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks for finding that too, Cassie.
The membership fee is based on population,
Yeah, based on our population compared to the total.
right? Okay, number 13 is the MACCOM lease agreement with the EOC, and that is provided in your packet. And Number 14, Eric has provided a spreadsheet with the vehicles and public works.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. Backing up to 13 here, did this one get sent off to our attorney as well,
Oh, yeah. What?
this lease? Because the conversation piece around this one was, can't remember if it's Ms. Rubio or Mr. Graham that asked it, was who does the work? And from what I'm reading, it doesn't actually say it in here. I mean, it clearly said that they handle their own light fixtures. Is what I saw in here when I was reading it. Don't remember what page it was on. Trying to find it again. Page 4 of 11, thank you. 5.01 is that section. It talks about maintenance and, but we had, the ask was to have our attorney look at this as well. So do we know if
Oh,
it?
you did?
Yes,
Oh,
it's
through the
okay.
chair, I apologize, I didn't know that.
That's
attorney
okay.
was
I mean,
supposed to be-
there was a lot that happened that night. So again, that might have
Did you
been-
want her to review it? To what?
So the question was who maintains or not maintains it, but who does, I think it was improvements to the building in their section. Mr. Graham, go ahead. You were the one that asked it, if I recall.
Right, so the question was, based on the funding request for MATCOM EOC is who's responsible for the lighting in there? This lease agreement that we're looking at says that's their job.
Right, page 4 of
We're
11.
responsible for structural stuff, and things that aren't structural are their responsibility. I don't remember seeing anything in here about HVAC, which was one of the things that we had talked about, upgrading the HVAC system. But there's certainly nothing in there that says that if they want upgraded HVAC and we have to upgrade the whole building, then we would share that cost. But so who's responsible for what? I mean, and I think what brought this discussion about was the Mount Spur elevated eruption status and the potential for ashfall. And it was, well, are we really gonna pay, to upgrade HVAC in a place that doesn't really need HVAC to be upgraded? So, yeah, if you could find out from the attorney, HVAC was the big thing, but I mean, getting a copy of the lease here is good because it says the walls and the roof are our problem and, basic electrical is our problem, but if anything they add would be their problem, which would include new lighting and such, which it looks like we were talking about absorbing the cost for.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the original ask was $100,000 in here. Let's just assume that we don't do the lighting in there. Would we be able to find out what the remaining amount would be needed if we were to not do the lighting portion of it?
Yeah, I have a HVAC company looking, so I'll get a quote.
Perfect, thank you.
And it would be nice when that quote comes back, Eric, if we would know, what percentage, of the square footage is allocated to MATCOM and what percentage of it is allocated to the lease so that we could negotiate on who's gonna pay for what on that, so.
Yeah, so on the HVAC, that wasn't gonna be a shared thing with the EOC. This was just for MATCOM's server room, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 14 is the Public Works fleet. And there is a spreadsheet attached. Ms. Rubio?
Madam Mayor, I had asked that last night about cause we had a small portion of this, but we still don't know. I mean, clearly what 3 vehicles we're replacing. Still, right? You're just gonna bring that back or something, I'm assuming? I don't know.
So the way the purchases had gone out before was we had to wait for the state contract to become available so we could see how much it would cost. And then we see what the funding allowed, much like how PD has to make a call when it's known. So typically, the way we've worked is Parks and Rec has a lot of really old vehicles. You can see a couple are up for auction right now. And so they get the hand-me-downs because of the seasonality of their work and the younger people that drive them. And then whatever vehicle is at the bottom for the regular staff is replaced as funding allows.
Okay, that's it for the questions.
Madam Mayor, can we take a 5-minute recess before we jump into the next section?
We are off the record at 7:17 with a 5-minute recess. back on the record at 7:23 PM. We are still in committee of the whole.
Madam Mayor?
Are they, Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to go back to the questions I was asking yesterday about the enterprise fund. I didn't turn to it. It's page 216, if I recall. Yeah, 216 in this year's budget. So Mayor, if I could, to Cassie here. I was trying to understand exactly how much money we had in the municipal airport to spend this year, because I looked at last year's fiscal audit and it didn't look like we had very much cash left over. And then looking at last year's funding as well, we did receive a $6.7 million grant, but that looked like it was committed to capital projects. And so I'm just trying to figure out how much cash is available for the $6.675 million that we're spending this year, because we're not transferring anything in. So that's what I'm trying to understand here.
Mr. Crafton, first off, I want to explain audit is developed in two different ways. There's governmental-wide accounting, which is all of our general fund. It would be our roads, vehicle, and all that. That has a fund balance. The unassigned fund balance that you see in there is actually cash. In net position, it is not cash. It is all of our net assets.
That's what I learned today.
So it doesn't represent a cash value. It's just our net position, and it coincides with the general fund, because the general fund sits with the committed fund balance for CIP. And so it moves as it needs cash. It's fluctuating between the two when we write a check out the door. It's taking money from the general fund and it's paying our bill, and then there's a transfer on the backside that takes through and makes our capital contribution or our capital asset that we get at the end of it. In the enterprise funds, we have only three types, I guess you could say, of net position. We have the non-spendable, which is our net depreciable assets, which is basically all of our assets that are depreciable minus all the accumulated depreciation, and then everything that's remaining on the books that we still need to depreciate out. This number is continually increasing right now because we are finishing up projects. That number actually will drastically increase coming up here at the end of this fiscal year, because our audit will represent Apron E, which is roughly well over a $4 or $5 million project. So that will be represented on that.
Sorry, which one was that you said that should have been increasing? That we were just talking about?
It'll be the depreciable assets. It's gonna be where the land depreciable assets.
Okay, I see it now, thank you.
That number will significantly go up, because right now all those capital assets are sitting in construction in progress, and they haven't been realized into a capital asset because they're not done yet. They just pretty much finished that up here, I think just last month, or maybe even before that for sure. So there's that. And then we are required by code to have a fund stabilization requirement, which is the 50% of the operating expenditures of the fund. And so the operating expenditures of the airport right now is only sitting at 366 or 464,560. So that's the math you're seeing down there. We are required to have 6 months of operating cash in there. After that, it's the unrestricted, and anything that we have left over goes down into that line item unless it is for a grant, specific projects. But a lot of our current FAA grants are not necessarily they're just airport specific. They're not specific to a actual project. So they're usable between different projects as we continue to work through the processes of them. So we're allowed to use the money out of different grants, out of different ways, out of the fund balance or the net position of the unrestricted. So it's kind of hard to explain but the cumulative amount is that 8.4 million if we continue on the path we're on.
Okay. So the 6.7 and change million, it was a non-operating grant that we got last year is included in this because it's carried over from last year.
Correct. And we haven't expensed it. And then it's allowed to go into the airport fund and be allowed to be used for all airport capital projects.
So last year it was considered committed into capital projects. So we haven't spent that 6.7 million?
No.
What was it for?
Oh, I'd have to go look.
Because I mean, it looks like we're gonna take 6.7 million that we got as a grant and turn around and use it to match a grant, is the way the numbers are, that's why I'm starting to understand now.
Correct. We're turning around and using it to match a grant and to use it to do projects that we have, depending upon what you're going to, out of the capital projects and out of the grants that we have currently.
Can we do that?
That's my question.
Can you do that? Yeah, we match our grants all the time with other grant funding.
They just got sued.
You can do that?
Yes.
You could do that.
Mhm.
You can match a grant.
Like our $5 million state legislative grant matched all of our FAA grants.
That must be in the writing of the grant. though.
Correct. Certain grants allow it, certain grants do not. It depends on the type of grant we're getting. The AIP grant that we get, which is the Airport Improvement Grant, which is automatically, we have to apply, I think, is that right? Yeah, we apply for it every year. That grant does not allow us to match to another FAA, but it will allow us to match to a state grant or to local funding. So, but the Apron E project, which was another FAA project, that project allowed us to match to FAA money for the AIP and allowed us to do state and local money. So it's just what they put into our grant assurances that we can utilize. And we don't know that until they come, till they give us the whole grant agreement, so whether or not I can offset that. So in other words, we may put $4.1 million in here for a match right now. I might be able to offset that with another grant we have, but I don't know that until they give me the grant agreement. Until I can't answer that question right now. It's all local funding, no matter what, until I receive the grant award, basically. If that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. Nothing's free. Yes.
That's nothing.
There's always strings. Yes.
Always.
So, to Cassie here, at the end of the day, we don't need to take anything out of our general fund. No transfers coming out. The airport has enough money to pay for all of its capital expenditures this year, is what you're telling me.
As it stands currently with this budget, yes. If everything goes through as it's supposed to be. If there are changes to that, then obviously the numbers are gonna change out.
Right, I mean, I'm just saying as I'm looking at it face value for here.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate you explaining that. I have some more questions while we're on this page though, unless somebody else, yeah, go for it.
Just that line, Madam Mayor, if I can.
Okay.
What if that grant doesn't go through? What does that look like for us? Option A is the grant. Woo, we get it. Option B, if we don't get it, what happens?
The 4.1 million returns to the general, or returns to the fund balance of the general fund.
Or are you talking about the 6.6?
6.6.
The 6.6 has already been appropriated, and it is money that we have. It's restricted it is money that we've already not received, but we have it on the books already as a grant.
We have it on the books, but we haven't received it.
It's been submitted for reimbursement.
Submitted, okay.
Some of it has came in since this has been made, I guess I should say, but yeah.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, what, I guess I asked the question earlier, what did we receive that 6.7 for? Cause it sounds like we already spent money, and so now we're getting reimbursed for it.
So the cash is going back into the account. Correct. This is the money coming back through net assets and through the grant revenue that we receive. It's part of the Apron E project, it's part of the AIP project, it's the state legislative grant. It's the master plan money for phase 1 and phase 2. It is also, there's another one in there too. I can't think of it at the moment. Runway maintenance, and there's another one.
Fencing.
We have a ton of them. I mean, there's probably 8 different FAA grants right now we're managing.
Is this common that we're paying things up front and then getting reimbursed by our grants on the back end?
Yes, almost all of our grants are that way. Our WPDA JAG grant is that way. All of our sewer grants are that way. The EPA 5.8 million is that way. We submit reimbursement for it. We pay everything up front. There are very few that we get the money in advance and then we pay it. Because we have to provide them detailed documentation of all the expenditures. We have to copy all the invoices, all the checks, all the payroll documents, different things of that nature, and be submitted through, and that they approve all the expenditures through the process. So it's very common with government. The only one we got up front was the ARPA funding, the big slurf money that we did receive. That money we did receive up front, but it is rare.
So that brings up another point, because if I remember correctly, going back to it, the CARES Act funding, there was a big debate whether that money was reimbursement and should have gone back to the general fund and not be spent. This was before your time, looking at Mr. Graham, because you probably remember the conversation, or whether that money was allowed to be spent. And so if we've already spent the money, shouldn't we be reimbursing ourselves, not putting it back into the airport fund to spend the money? Or is that, unless that's the conversation for the council, I understand that might not be a different, because if we spend $6 million and then we get the $6 million back, yeah, we're paying ourselves back, but the way this is getting put is it's saying, hey, look, we have $6 million that we get to spend because we got it back. And so in actuality, if we spend the $6 million, we've spent $6 million. We're not at a net zero at that.
The money goes back into the general fund, but it is in the accounting reporting. It is not, it's sitting in the airport fund. We have to recognize it.
Right, because that's where it was originally. So
Yes.
basically,
The cash goes back to the general fund. It all sits in the main bank account. It sits there and does its investments as it tries to do right now.
so we basically put in, I'm just gonna use $6.7 million into this fund. We transferred it in, we spent the money, we got it back, but that 6.7 has to go back into this account.
Correct.
Assuming if we chose not to spend it though, that's when it would end up having to go back into the general fund because it's not capital expenditures, correct?
Correct.
So if we spend this money, we have spent $6.7 million. We are not,
Correct, but the cash is going,
I believe the cash was appropriated and it came from the general fund for airport projects. And then we, under the terms of the grant, we then requested reimbursement under the terms of the grant, and they sent it back to us, and it goes back into the general fund. But in terms of what asset was created, it was created at the airport, and that's why I think that's why it shows up on this spreadsheet.
what I'm trying to say here is we spent $6 million knowing we were getting $6 million back. What's that?
So, we spent about 10. But
Right, I'm that's just the number because it's right here in front of me, because that's the non-operating grant that I'm talking about. So basically, we spent $6 million knowing we have the $6 million that we got back. So if we spend the $6 million, in actuality, we spent $12 million. In a sense, we got 6 of it back, but we are $6 million less at that.
spend the 26 money. The problem is they're both 6 million. So, yes,
I think that
you
works
are
out.
correct on that part, yes.
Yes, what I'm saying is, we spent 6 million, we got 6 million back. Now we are asking to spend another $6 million, but at this point in time, we're not asking for we're not expecting that $6 million back.
Correct, that money is coming out of basically the unrestricted or the general fund balance committed for capital improvement projects, correct.
So
But-
Madam Mayor, I think, so you're looking at is 12, right? And now we're asking for another 6, so now we're at 18. Is that what you're trying to twist?
No,
Okay.
no, so last year,
not,
I think it
yeah.
was fiscally last year, we spent we said, the administration said we wanna do $6 million in projects, I'm just gonna use this. And they said, but we're gonna be getting $6 million in grants. So we said, great, like, we're basically gonna upfront the cost and we're gonna get the money back. Well, now that we got the money back, the administration is saying, hey, let's do another $6 million in work. But at this time, we don't know if we're getting that money back.
Exactly.
And so that's why I'm saying, if we spend the $6 million, we will have spent $6 million. Whereas last year, and the way this reads, was we got the money back.
Right.
We're not
There's no
getting the money
match
back
for
this
this
time.
money.
Yeah.
That's all you have to
Correct,
Correct.
quote it, is there's no match.
Yeah.
It's our money, yep.
correct.
But
But
what
the-
I'm hearing in the back of my mind is, yeah, we want to spend $6 million at the airport, and we will be applying for grants, which will allow us to be reimbursed for, 74% of that, or something like that. So we're gonna spend another 6 million of our money, and then hopefully get $4.5 million back, so we'll end up spending $1.5 million is what I'm hearing.
No, the 74%, no, we're gonna spend it.
We're gonna spend $13.1 million for the whole entire project. Of that 13.1 million, 74% of that is gonna be on FAA. The remaining,
4.1.
yeah, 24 point whatever it is gonna be on us. Whether that match is gonna be coming out of our capital improvement project fund, whether it's coming off of a state match saying that we're gonna use some other funds that we have received through FAA if they allow it, or those are basically, we don't have any state money left, so we've applied for it, but we haven't received any more.
But we're drawing down our savings with the assumption that a
Correct.
significant portion of that will be refilled. So yeah, we are spending money, but it's, to me, it's like rotating the money through. You know, they say when you spend $1 at McDonald's, you're actually spending $7, because that dollar rotates 7 times before it gets out of the economy. And so that's what we're doing, is we're just leveraging that, in this case, $6 million, but even before that, we had spent grant money at the airport for a variety of projects, and it just keeps rolling, but we don't know for 26 what grants will be allocated. We've been told some things, in a very positive meeting that the mayor and the deputy administrator had with the FAA, have been told some things, but we haven't seen paperwork on those yet. So we're making, the administration is asking us to be able to commit money so that when that paperwork comes through, we can say, yeah, we are committed. We've already committed money to this project. We've already committed assets to this project. As opposed to, well, we're gonna wait and see if we get some money, and then hopefully we'll talk to city council into coughing up a couple $2 million to finish the project, so.
Correct, and that's what I was gonna say, is that's at the option of, we put it in here, but we don't have to do the transfer until we actually have the grant money, and then we can return with a ordinance, I believe, I don't know, ordinance or resolution, whichever one it is. We would return to transfer out of general fund balance and move it into the airport for the 4.1 million.
Instead of doing the transfer now, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Now is in whenever this all happens.
Correct, and
Normally,
if I leave it in the general fund right now, it can sit and keep accruing interest off of its investments.
Correct.
That's the main reason I'm leaving and wanting not to transfer it out, is because of that. Because of the amount of interest we are earning off of our investments currently.
So, sorry to,
It's pretty good,
if I could respond to Mr. Graham. So this 4.1, we have no, that is our cost, it's coming out of our savings account. At this time, we have no reimbursement for 4.1. That's what I'm saying. So at
Correct.
this time, there's no reimbursement of 4.1 million.
Correct.
There is no reimbursement, but there is a hope for reimbursement
Correct.
for a large portion of that.
Correct. Where are you getting that?
Wherever we can beg,
Well, I get
borrow
that.
against
That's what I'm
steal.
saying, I'm just making sure that, it's exactly, that's what I'm saying, is
Right.
that at this point, it's not, there is no, at this point in time, whereas in the past, there's been a couple times, like, for instance, I think it was the sewer project, when I put $250,000 into the budget for the sewer master plan, the administration said, hey, like, there's a good chance we're already gonna get a grant for this. So it becomes a no-brainer to allocate the $250,000 because we know we're getting the money back. I was trying to clarify, I mean, this time next year, we could have spent the 6.6 and got none of it back, is kind of what I'm saying. It's not a guaranteed quite yet. And it's a big ask this year, which we've alluded to. Madam Mayor, so I still have more questions on that if we're done with that topic. More questions on that page. I was looking back at last year's budget, so fiscal year 2025, and it said we were gonna operate at a lot bigger of a loss. And there is a project that was in there that I used, that was my estimation, 170, if you're looking at last year's budget, by the way, is the page number. And, 170. The project specifically was on page 171 called Proposed Budget for $1,085,000, which is why we only operated at a $207,000 loss, because it doesn't show up in this year's amended budget. So I'm like, did we amend it out? Where did that project go? I can give you a moment or give you more information, help you find it. So, do you have last year's budget in front of you? So on page 171, 171R is what I have, because that was the revised one. There was a proposed budget about halfway down, and it was a $1,085,000 project. If you go back to 170, it's under other purchase services, which brought our other purchase services to $1,349,000, which is why we operated at a $1.5 million loss. Now, if you go to this year's budget and you look at other purchase services for amended 2025, on page 216, it's only $42,000. So I'm trying to find what happened to that project. Did we move it somewhere else? Because there was a few different times I saw numbers change in these books.
While Cassie's looking for that, we'll take an at ease. on the record at 7:49.
Okay. So I'm gonna preface this a little bit. 25 enterprise fund budgets were developed by Ted Leonard, so just to fair warn you, so I don't know his mindset, so I'm just gonna tell you what I know. Based upon what Ted had done there, we had gone back and looked, and I actually talked to the auditors, and these net position statements that you're seeing right here, FY22 and 23 and 24 that are in here match our audit. And so therefore, the auditors said that because the 1.3 million part of it, not all of it, was capital projects. And that is not operating expenses, that is a capital improvement. If you flip over to the next page, on 171, I believe it is, you'll see there was $1.310 million that was in there.
Yeah.
And if you take that plus the 89,345, I believe it comes out to whatever that whatever number was that. 1349. It may not. But it's one of those together. But that's how we have come through. So that's the difference in what we've done. So I have moved out the construction. It's in its own line item, and it's not in the operating expenditures because we don't use the capital to operate. So that's the difference. This is the true operating budget for the airport, and we're having a true net loss of next year of $295,560.
So just so I'm understanding correctly here, basically other purchased is 42, and last year's 1.3. So about 1,307,000 ish was supposed to be moved to the capital expenditures instead of the operating.
The operating of the airport.
And so that got corrected.
Correct. And so if you look at in the audit, you can compare that to page, what page is that? 102 of the audit. Is it 102? Maybe actually a different one. And that's the hard part because we don't include everything in here because they're a little different in budget wise, and we also don't budget depreciation. That is not something.
That's fine. I mean, it answered enough. I was just like,
That's the reason
that's
for
a
it,
pretty big
is because our
discrepancy.
auditors recommended to move it out because of the fact that it is not a true operating expense. It's not showing you the true picture of how much it takes to operate the airport versus a capital improvement of it.
Okay, and to continue kind of with some of these numbers in here, more of just a general question, is it normal to see other years change based on what our audits are then? Because some of the 23 numbers changed, and we completed our audit, was it last year, I think it was? There was one of the audits that got done at a later date than when it was supposed to.
Correct.
And that was 23 and 24.
23 didn't get approved until March of 24.
And so because of that, it was after 25's budget was done before this one was done, so
Correct.
this
And so
one's
we were
reflecting.
already prepping, 25s in 24, and we couldn't wait any longer to get it before the council, so we just took what we knew at the point in time. And so that's why they changed.
And so that probably answers my question, because I had other ones on page 173 of our budget book. There was some capital project numbers that had changed pretty drastically from 25 to this year. Sorry again, I mean, obviously I could go through all these audits, but
Do you mean for each individual fund, or?
not every single one. I was just mostly.
Well, and the amended budget, is anything that we appropriated throughout the year, and you'll recall, at least for the sewer fund, that 9.4 million, that has 5.9 million that was appropriated in October after the fact that your budget was adopted. So there's a drastic, anytime we appropriated new money either out of the general fund, those budgets are
Right.
all amended to reflect that, and it will not match the adopted budget.
Okay, awesome. I think that answers my questions.
Mr. Kraft, anything else?
I think I'm good. I think the conversation now is what Ms. Cottle had brought up yesterday, unless the council has other questions.
What was the last part of that, what Scott had brought up yesterday?
The question she had brought up yesterday.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you said Scott, I was trying to figure out what that question was.
Madam Mayor, so what I brought up yesterday was wanting to have the conversation of what our end goal is with the budget this year, what our priorities are. If our end goal is just to cut the budget so we don't have the increase that we do this year, you know, that's part of the conversation. Then if we're gonna try to reduce some of this increase, what are our priorities that we want to focus on? One of my priorities is definitely the infrastructure, our water and sewer. I'm concerned, especially with our sewer. We're sending sewage to Anchorage. No offense to Anchorage, but I'm waiting for the day when DEC and EPA tells Anchorage, you're not gonna do what you're doing anymore. And they're gonna look at us and say, we can't take your sewage anymore. And what are we gonna do then? We have to start planning for that now with our infrastructure. We need to work on that. We need to make sure that we have the capacity for our city, and we don't. Everything with our sewer infrastructure is very aged, needs replacing, and that's a really big concern of mine over a lot of other projects. And I think we need as a council to have some of these discussions before we finalize this budget. So I'd really like to hear what other council members, you know, what are your priorities? What do you want to do with everything we're doing with this budget? So help me out here.
Put me in, coach. Off the sidewalk, please.
I do, y'all.
So I would agree with you. No one ever wants to look at their backyard, but we need to stop, hold the line, turn around and look at our water and sewer. Clearly, those are big issues right now. And not saying that, you know, the forward thinking can keep going, but I think holding the line, whether that's cutting the budget, whether that's positions, whatever this may look like for whatever the council's going with what direction, but we have a lot of cleanup. And I just think there's so many projects out there right now that it's like, I can't focus myself. I don't know about you guys, but it's like the Da Vinci Code for me, I feel like at this point. And I would rather just really just put the brakes on and really focus on where the main concern is. And I don't know, you know, obviously, clearly, we all wanna talk right now to try to figure out what that is, but I definitely can tell you, water and sewer is at the top of my list. And until we get that infrastructure fixed and operating where we need it, I would hold everything else.
Mr. Green?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Elena, for your comments. So before the council meeting, Councilperson Cottle and I were talking, and I was relaying a memory of my childhood, which, as you know, wasn't yesterday. But my father was a child of the Depression in the 30s. He grew up in a single-parent household led by his father, and he had 4 brothers and sisters in a time when money was tight, you know, and then eventually the recession ended and things got better, but money was always tight. And in his household, which would have been the household that I grew up in, frugality was the rule. It wasn't we'll be frugal when we can, it's that we will be frugal, period. And so when it came time for Christmas, you know, all the other, kids in the neighborhood would be getting, fancier things and so on and so forth. But in our family, there were, each of the 3 children got 4 gifts, at least 4 gifts, but they fell into 4 different categories. There were things that you wanted, Stu, what do you want for Christmas? So that was my list, and I would get something off of that list, something that I wanted, not something that my parents wanted me to have, but something that I wanted. So something you want, and then there are things that you need. So Stu, what do you need? And Stu would get something off of that list as well, and usually that wasn't Stu's list, that was Mom's list. But so I got something I wanted, something I needed, and then there were 2 other gifts. One of the other gifts was something to wear, which in my household usually meant jeans and a pair of boots, and then something to read, to improve the mind. So we had those 4 things there: something you want, something you need, something to wear, and something to read. Well, we've got plenty of stuff to read here, and we don't have any shortage of clothing, but we do need to look as a council at what do we want and what do we need. And I think both Ms. Cottle and Ms. Rubio have said what we need is sewer, water and sewer. What we need is that infrastructure. That's the need. That's the one thing that we need. So now we have to decide, well, what do we want? And for me, what do we want? We want the airport. So when I look at this budget, again and again and again, I look at those 2 things, and then I try to bubble the other stuff out. Mrs. Rubio is exactly correct. We've got a million things going on, and we do need to play cleanup and get those cleaned up, but we don't need to expand them to make things work. And when I look at our original, budget presentation here, I look at, in 2024, we spent $26 to $27 million. 2025, well, we spent $35 million. Okay, and then in 2026, we're looking at spending $38 million. So that is, to say a substantial increase is a huge understatement. So I think we need to get back to looking at those 2 things. What do we want and what do we need? And if it's not number 1 on the want list or number 1 on the need list, then we really need to think, how can we minimize that expense to get this number back down? $30 million for a city of our size of about 10,000 people is a pretty reasonable budget. Obviously we're going to spend more than that because we have some significant infrastructure needs there, but we can trim, looking through my numbers, I think we can easily trim a couple of $1 million out of this budget by saying this isn't a priority this year. What is a priority this year are the needs, which is the water and sewer, and the want, which is the airport. And the reason we want that is so that we have the continued opportunity to expand and the improvements in lifestyle and safety and things that come with having the airport there. So I think when you're looking through your budget, if you kind of look at those 4 things, I know that's my story and doesn't necessarily apply to anybody else here at the table, but those 2 things are important. What's at the top of that list and what's not at the top of that list? Do we need to grow what's not on that list, or do we need to just maintain what we have when we move forward? Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. I jumping on the bandwagon a little bit here with the water and sewer. I think as well, we do have that ball rolling a little bit. I'm not saying we're not going to stop putting money towards it. I really do think it's important. I like what we're seeing in here. We've had some really in-depth conversations around where water and sewer's at. Part of it is, we need to get this master plan in place, which we put that out to RFP. I'll tell you as well, one of the things I already put an amendment in for is a water master plan as well. That's the next one here was I said, let's get the ball rolling last year on the sewer plan, because we knew, like Ms. Cottle said, that one's, I'm not gonna use the language what I wanna say in it, but we're in it with that one. And so that was really the ball we needed to get rolling, and we've gotten it there. We've gotten some grant dollars coming into it, you know. I think we're pushing that one pretty hard here. We're doing the work put in for it. And then now my conversation piece is the water plan as well, you know. Let's get the ball rolling. Let's put plans in place, because right now, as we've discussed previously with this comp plan, the city's kind of operating outside the bounds of what it's supposed to be doing. We are supposed to have a document that tells us what the people want, where the city's supposed to go. And that plan's 14 years out of date right now. And then we have no water plans, no sewer plans. When was the last time we did a roads plan? I know there's a roads master plan floating around. I saw it one time. And
It's
so
20 years old.
one more time?
20 years old.
20 years old. And so, and then we've talked about the feasibility study for the Menard Center. I mean, are there things, because, well, we were put here for a reason, so we have at least somewhat of an understanding of what people want, what the city needs. But that's my struggle a lot, is we're operating without guidelines in place to tell us at least somewhat of where to go. And so that's a little bit of what I want to see in here, is making sure we put some structure and a foundation so we know where we're going in place here. And then I agree with Mr. Graham as well. I think, again, part of the administration's job is to bring us a budget that they think they can operate in, and our job as the council is to go in here and go, okay, is this really necessary this year? Where can we trim some fat here and there so that we can keep plugging along? Because I think it was said earlier, this is not sustainable. If we come back next year and see this exact same percentage of growth, we are going to be looking at a $40 million capital expenditure budget, which is completely unreasonable. And so I think the administration's done a really good job. You've done your job. You've brought us something that is a working plan. And so our job now is to look at this and go, what's most important to the people here? And that's where I'm at, is I want to trim some. I mean, I'll be open and honest about it. The amendments that I put forward were 34 amendments deep, but my amendments alone, along with some that I worked on with Ms. Cottle, equated to $3 million in cutting. And a lot of it's stuff that we've talked about here already, just saying, hey, this isn't necessary this year. We have enough money in the budget here. You know, let's cut that out. It equated to $3 million already, which is, again, 5% of our budget. I think we're on track to go somewhere. So that's my thoughts on it.
Nikki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I am in agreement with that. I think also we need a comprehensive plan, but we actually need a strategic plan for short term. And I know Ms. Nygaard had done that in the past, and I know that's in the budget, but I think we're kind of operating without one right now, and we need that vision too, which is strategic thinking that shows purpose, mission, guiding principles, articulate and commit to clear vision to target 3 to 10 years. Now, a comprehensive plan is more like a 10 to 20 year lookout. So I know an amendment came through to scratch this strategic plan because we don't have a comprehensive plan, but I would like to put that back in and still work, of course, on that comprehensive plan, but we gotta have our strategy right now. We should have our strategy while we're doing the budget, and we're not really. So that's one thing. I also agree, of course, with sewer and wastewater, but I also do, and what's the end goal? Are we hoping just to cut? Do we have an amount? We want our budget to be this amount, and we'll cut to that. I also do want to involve staff on, you've presented us with your budget, it probably has your stew, your needs, your wants, your, like to have, or, and maybe tell us because you do the job day in and day out, what what do you have to have? What is the priority? What is that need? And let us know that too for our feedback and how we proceed then.
Mayor, could I say something?
Yes.
Just to address Mr. Crafton's comment, the administration has brought a significant amount of capital to the city, more than I think ever in history. And we did that because we were in an environment where money was 6, 7, 8%. And we could have done this infrastructure improvement even 5 years ago. It was 2% money. 2% money is what we could have borrowed to put the water and the sewer in, and we delayed it and we delayed it and we delayed it until we were very fortunate to get the amount of capital that we have brought to the city. So yes, we brought a budget, but we've also brought capital dollars and different funding mechanisms that we've never had. When you have large hotels tell you, we would have been here 3 years ago, but you didn't have water, and we miraculously in 3 years funded the infrastructure to get them to put the shovels in the ground. That, I think, is a heck of an accomplishment. And yet we're having a conversation about, well, this is a good budget, but we're gonna give you another haircut. I want you guys to stop and think about what this administration has really brought forward to you.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. God?
Thank you, Crystal, for that. I think we are all aware what has been brought, and it's been a lot. There's been a lot of growth, there's been a lot of change. But because we have put some of these major things off, some of these we can't put off anymore, and I think we have to prioritize them. And I think everybody's done a good job bringing us their budgets. Yep, some of them are needs, some of them are wants. I mean, overall, we have this great big wish list, and we all wish that we could do everything, but we can't. And not if we're gonna be fiscally responsible. This is the public's money. And it's our job to make sure that we spend it responsibly. If we get to the point where we get people can't flush their toilets because we can't do anything with the sewer, I think there won't be an uproar. I don't want us to get to that point. I want us to make sure that we have the system in place and fixed so that we don't. We're already, Eric's Band-Aiding the system every day. And yes, I'm so thankful that my toilet flushes and that you pump my tank. I'm very thankful for that.
And are gonna replace it.
Yeah, you're gonna replace it someday. But I think we have to, when it comes to our water and sewer right now, we have to be very forcefully proactive before we get behind the 8 ball that we are right behind as it is now. And I don't think that we have put enough, I kind of lost the word I wanted, but we need to put that as our front focus. And it has to be at the top of our list. It has to be at the top of our priorities. Because if we don't have the water and the sewer, we don't have the growth. And we don't have additional capital. We don't have a lot of those things. That's really the linchpin as far as, and it's my opinion, and I don't speak for the entire council, but that's my opinion that we need to focus on. I would love to be able to tell every single department that we're not gonna cut anything in their funds, but I don't feel that's realistic. I think we need to take a really hard look at even what the asks are for water and sewer. And is that a reasonable amount? Is that something that we have to look at, that we need to fund more to get these projects done? Because it all takes time, and we have to start now. And like I said, that's just my opinion. But what I personally would like to see is everybody really think about this between now and our next meeting and really put down what your priorities are, and then look at our amendments. What amendments have we already done that maybe we want to pull back out? Are there other amendments that we need to add funding to some infrastructure? I think we're just kind of at that tipping point that we really need to take a serious look at this. So that's my 2 cents worth.
I have a question for all of you. You know, we tout that we are debt-free, but how much, or are you even willing to pull out of basically our savings to put forward to the water and sewer? Not the airport, but water and sewer. Even though that airport is going to bring a lot of jobs and infrastructure along with it. But how much are you willing to pull out of our savings account? Or are you willing to go out and borrow to overhaul that sewer and water?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't disagree with you here, and I want to drive a little bit of the water sewer point home, because that's really if you look at where our revenue comes, where is it coming from? It's coming from our taxes. How do we get more businesses, not necessarily businesses, how do we get more taxes? How do we get our sales tax? And a lot of that is getting more businesses in here, getting more people to come to the city of Wasilla, and that is a lot through our water and sewer, because a lot of businesses don't want to come out here and have to deal with a septic system or have to deal with a well. And I think that is one of the big driving factors to getting the city to grow. I mean, we can shape the city, or we can let it be podunk still, as the mayor likes to say. And this city, I say, I mean, I've grown up here for 20 years. I know some people have been around here a lot longer than I have. But this city grew a lot faster than anybody expected, and nobody realized, and nobody almost could even plan for it. It happened so fast. And I think that's where we're at right now, is putting a plan in place so that we're prepared for the continued growth that we can see this city have. But the mayor does bring up a question, because I know Crystal has mentioned it to me before, is that conversation, and I'm not saying I want to do this, I'm just curious about the conversation, is leveraging the dollars we have instead of continuously pulling our money out of our savings account where we're losing the interest on it. And I mean, I don't know if the council has the appetite for it, but how do we have that conversation at least so that we could start leveraging the dollars versus continuously just writing checks and losing that interest over time? Have we started exploring those options? And I don't know if that goes to Cassie or Deputy Administrator or what, or if it's, but I'm curious about the conversation. Mr. Graham has something to say.
And I think, you know, this administration and the prior administration have done a great job of doing exactly what you're talking about, leveraging dollars. You know, the whole time I've been on the council, the discussion about, you know, do we need to bond to do this? Do we need to bond to do that? And the answer is always, well, that's an option. And the administration and the council have always typically voted against it, with the exception of some big projects, you know, like the library, for instance, like the police station, like the Menard Center. You know, but typically the answer is no, because if we hack away at it a piece at a time, the $1 that we spend gets matched with $2 or $3 or $4 from somewhere else. You see this much more with DOT projects at the state level than we do at the local level. But I think, you know, if we look back at the past 7, 8 years, I mean, the city has done a remarkable job at leveraging dollars. And when we say taking the money out of our savings account, in this case, that's not really what we've been doing. We've been growing the city, so we're growing our sales tax revenues, so we're taking that additional growth and using those dollars as opposed to putting them in the bank. So I think we are leveraging those dollars. We do have a wise investment strategy for the money that we do have in the bank, and we do have, you know, an enviable capital position. You know, I mean, there are a couple of communities, you know, Valdez, for instance, North Slope Borough, for instance, that have much more robust bank accounts than we do, but when you look around the state, you know, and like I said, I've been on the board at AML for 9 years, and I can tell you, of the 165 communities, 160 of them come to us and say, what are you doing to make it work? How can we do that in our community? So we're doing a good job. Is there a way to do better? I don't know, but the way that we've been able to do better in the last couple of years is with the AAJA funding and other money that has, you know, essentially fallen out of the sky. But most of that money came with strings, and some of that strings was we had to spend some of our money to do that. So, and in some cases, the return was 9 or 10 to 1. You know, in some cases, it's 2 or 3 to 1. But I mean, back to post-COVID money that was being offered out there, I mean, that was huge leveraging factor to make that work. So I think we're doing a really good job with that, and the administration is to be commended for that. I mean, could we do better? I don't know. Maybe not. I'm sure we can always do better.
That was the question I was asking.
Could we, the council, do better? No, probably not, because we just don't have the individual expertise and the amount of knowledge and the amount of brain power that the staff has here. But I think I've never heard the administration say, crap, we missed that one because we didn't look at it. You know, they always looked at it, and in some cases, we pass on grant funding because there are, you know, I mean, there are strings attached. You know, there was a lot of DEI strings and things like that, you know, it would have cost us money to end up taking the money. And not only that, it would have cost us money on a continuous basis, you know, year after year after year after year. But I've never heard the administration say, oh, dang, we missed out on that. We missed out on that grant because we weren't paying attention. I haven't heard them say that, and hopefully never will. But I think they've been doing a really good job, and it's, you know, AML has a grant writing and grant reporting business, essentially a shared service is what it's called. You know, they're very good at letting us know, hey, there's money out there. You know, if you want to apply, here's how you do it. And if you want us to make the application for you, we can do that. But I mean, I haven't seen us miss anything. I mean, we have done, we haven't missed anything that we wanted, put it that way.
I wasn't trying to say we were doing bad. I'm just, that was my question was, could we do better? Have we explored the option to say, are we doing the best that we possibly can? That was my question.
Let me ask you guys one more question. Have you ever considered, because you all know Wasilla takes the lead in this borough. You know, Stu, you was at Chamber today, and the numbers that they showed and whatever, I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, that's Wasilla, that's not the borough. And it's true, because we are the fastest growing, and we are all of these in first. So, but having said that, have you guys thought about working with the borough to have a region sewer?
Madam Mayor, that was gonna be my next question. If there has been any movement on it, I think the borough is getting to that point.
Oh, they are. We've
Very
talked about it.
definitely, and I know there's been some discussion. I don't know how much interest like Palmer has shown or anybody else has shown, because I mean, let's face it, when it comes down to funding something like that, the bulk of it's gonna end up coming from us.
Sure it will.
The interconnect.
Us in the borough.
Yeah, us in the borough, because, well, Palmer doesn't have the funding and neither does Houston. You know, they're like the little brothers that don't get much of an allowance, so, but the last week or so, I haven't heard if there's been any more discussion, movement, and then I don't know how much some of the council knows about that, so I'd really like somebody to speak to that.
So
Crystal?
through the mayor to Councilmember Cottle, you bring up a very good point. Councilmember Velock also said it. Strategic planning is part of that macro conversation, saying, okay, if the priority is sewer and we only have 2,200 customers that are paying $40 a month, how are we going to fund this? If we want to expand water And then, what are your policies? We know from just modernizing a few departments that we had policies that were as old as Abraham. They didn't work in the modern world. And so maybe it's just a matter of a little, like, maybe instead of saving 60% of every dollar, we save 40 and put 10 into an infrastructure. There's all different ways we can do it, but you have to be very clear when that strategic plan goes out. You can use it to get money, you can use it to attract business, you can use it to promote employees. It is a document that is really thought through, not just with what are our priorities, but how are we gonna fund those, and who are the partners we need to be talking to? Should we be talking to the borough, or should we be talking to Elon Musk? We don't know, because we haven't done an assessment of where we even are. We use the budget to say we're gonna be strategic, but I couldn't give that budget to Mike Brown at the borough and have him understand what our priorities are and how we're gonna pay for it. And I think that strategic plan for $50,000 or $100,000 could take us up to a place where we're very intentional where we're gonna get in 5 years. Otherwise, next year, this is gonna be the same practice. We're gonna take $1 and we're gonna figure out who's gonna bust the rope.
I mean, just observation.
You need to come and
Sorry.
sing. And turn the mic on, please.
Zane Treesh, Library Director. I've been listening to the conversation, and you brought a good point about the library, and I wasn't here when it was built, and I wasn't here when the police station was built. But what they did, my understanding is, they didn't do it by bonds. They took it to the voters and said, "Hey, do you want this facility? The library first, and the police station second." And put it to the voters and said, "Is this a priority for the community? Are you gonna be willing to take a 0.5 raise in taxes to fund this?" And once that structure is funded, then at least with the library, they scaled it back to what it was before. And it took about 3 years, I think, to fund the library without any debt. Just a thought. I'm just wondering, is it possible to have a PR campaign to put something on the ballot that says, look, this sewer or water or both is important to this community. It's important to your business, because the more people you're going to draw in is going to help your business, whatever that business might be. Do you guys want to vote this and do a 0.5 or whatever? I mean, you have to come with the numbers. You have to, and then after that infrastructure's in place, you take that, or you take it away like we did, or like you did with the library, at least. That's just my 2 cents. And that way you're not having to borrow. If the voters feel that's their priority for that, going that direction, then you've got your answer there, I think, and you can start using that to do that. But thanks.
Thanks, Zane. Through the chair to the council, just for my 2 cents, I really think the one thing we are missing is those what I call the governing documents. The plans, the long-term plans. We see it with the comp plan. The attorney said over and over, that's a legally binding document that is supposed, and we're how many, 20 years?
14 years.
And so I don't know that this is great conversation. This is conversation we should have work sessions, special meetings on during the year, or a slow regular meeting. But really to drive it back, I think some of this stuff isn't gonna be solved before we need to adopt our budgets. Right. That's just my 2 cents, but great conversation.
Madam Mayor. I agree with you, Crystal. I think the strategic plan does need to be done. At this point, though, it's 1 year. The comp plan will be done next year. We've got, we do the council goals, we do the council initiatives, We've gotten this far without some of this stuff. Could we hold off 1 more year is kind of what I'm looking at, we are working on some projects. I mean, honestly, if we were really gonna go at it, we should borderline have no capital expenditures. We should only be maintaining until the comp plan's done. I mean, technically speaking, if that's what we wanted to go as far as, but I mean, we all know that there are certain things that still need to be done, Mr. Mr. Graham's mentioned the airport. We've talked about the Menard Center, the library, water and sewer. We know these things still need to be done. Some things still need to be moved forward. But until I get that comp plan, like you said, I mean, there's gonna be a lot, I feel like there's gonna be a lot of questions answered. I mean, I like what we've done over the last year, 2 years for strategic planning is how we've done it. I think we can get by one more year, with what we've got, so. I don't know what else much to say on this.
Can I make
Kathy?
one?
Mayor,
Oh, sorry.
do you want to go ahead, Cassie? Okay, through the mayor to Crystal. Crystal, if we fund the from the, untie my allergy brain here, the strategic plan, thank you, and it goes out to RFP, tell me what kind of a time frame we're looking at that you see how long it's gonna take for us to have a completed strategic plan. Is that gonna take a year?
For the many I've done through school districts and through other organizations, they take about 6 months. And they usually begin right around July and August, and you begin the process. Once you begin your next fiscal year, you begin the process of it. So if this budget was approved, we would get right on the ball to get an RFP out, to get a consultant to try to get this started in July or August. And it would be hopefully completed by December, so that when I go to build the budget in January for everything that we need, we would have a guiding path. Because right now, and this is kind of what I was gonna say anyway, your budget goals and initiatives that got approved through that AM, that is what I build this budget off of. That is what we make the numbers go through, that is what we have as a guiding principle of what we have to do. And then the mayor kind of tacks on what she wants as a priority, and that's what builds this budget. So right now, we are kind of living and breathing by this goal and initiatives that are being approved. And that's how things are getting in here, you know, that's how we're getting, you know, acquiring land or conceptual plans for, you know, the water expanding commercial footprints and different things of that nature. That's how these are coming in, is because the strategic plan is because it was in these goals and initiatives. And so, like I said, that's why we're kind of like, I literally go down the budget and check off every single one of these to make sure that there is something in the budget that it pertains to each and every one of these initiatives or goals, so that we make sure that we've covered everything that the council was wanting based off their goals and initiatives that they approved. So I think that's, you know, something to think about. And it would be similar in a strategic plan, but it is I've seen them 30 to 40, 50 pages long, and they're very detailed, and they're adapted, and they're, you know, you are constantly referencing, they have performance measures, they have things that we come back and do reports quarterly to say, this is where we're at on these things, this is where this has been, or whatever the cases are. So there's a lot of feedback and things that goes back and forth between administration and the council, so.
And I'm currently working on two different strategic plans for organizations that I serve on their board. So, you know, I'm pretty well aware of how the process works. And just like a budget is a living, breathing document that constantly moves and adjusts, sometimes so do goals. And goals that the council had for our goals and initiatives, those can, in priority, can kind of shift and stuff through the year as we see things come up. So if we fund this strategic plan, and I'm kind of listening to, you know, most of the council here that's wanting that, I still think we need to look at moving forward on some real, very strategic funding for water and sewer that I don't think we can hold off until we have a strategic plan in place, that we still need to move forward on some of this.
Through the chair to the body, the other thing about plans that I've always been an advocate for is, as we change administrations in council members and staff, it keeps us focused. So we're not constantly shifting and changing priorities. So that's just another benefit. And then I'll be quiet about plans.
Madam Mayor, to I'm not sure who. So the upgrades to the water and sewer, I know we have stuff like that in this budget. Is everything in this budget that would get us to where we need to be? No. Or how much is left after this budget?
That's a great question. I don't have a way of forecasting that, but I do really appreciate what the council's talked about tonight, because the things that we need to plan for are incredibly impactful, and they're going to be very expensive. And that means we have to have direct focus on what the goal is, where we're gonna go. I appreciate what the mayor said about, leading the valley, because we've seen major projects stall, and we know that we're on a precipice too. So what we did building this budget, especially on the water sewer side, is to explain all of the facets that we need to address. We need to be able to have more storage. We need to have more conveyance for water, on the water side, of course. And then on sewer, we need to finish the projects that we've started, where we're identifying how to raise capacity at our current treatment plant. That master plan, the one that's 20 years old, it had another, I've only looked at it a little bit, but it had another treatment plant like down on KGB or something like that. So that's bold. Like, I looked at that and thought, how in the world would we do that? But that's the level of boldness that these master plans have to have. And so it does take kind of a different review mindset to say these are big deals. Ms. Villock, I don't have an ultimate number for you, because that's what we need to work through, is to say, because you'll bring all those facets in. How fast has the valley grown? How many new people do we have? How much commercial expansion have we had? What are the projections? Cassie's extremely familiar with how the school district works with their projections for students, because in that world, your student-based allocation is your money. And so they have a demographer on staff that tries to get to the single student on forecasts so that they know where their revenue will be. And so that's the kind of level of detail we need to get into that master plan, is to think ahead on what pressures we'll see as our neighbors around us expand and come into the city limits to do their shopping and raise those sales tax numbers, but also put pressure on our water and sewer.
I would just add to that, it also gives us some direction on what do we charge for our services, and at what point do we inject capital, and where do we get that capital, and how consistent is that capital, and when do we raise rates? We have not really thought through why we charge the prices that we do, and we're very fortunate, I think, to have resources like water that's unlimited, that if you have a leak for 3 or 4 days, you don't know till it comes to the surface, that's okay, because we got a lot of it. But what if we didn't? I mean, you talked about scarcity. The scarcity of water, we would be looking at our rates right now, saying what should we really charge? Because it's more than just your meter, it's the capacity that some of these businesses take from our water. Like a car wash takes a lot more capacity than your house, and they should have a charge associated with that capacity. And so those are things that, to just go one step further, is are we charging, are we not charging, and then how do we get the return on the investment that your residents and this valley is going to really appreciate.
I think one thing you need to think about, just keep this in the back of your mind. I think we need to work with the borough for the regional sewer plant. They got plenty of land out KGB and other places, but if it could be paid for by 1 mil of property tax, that is what we all pay it. None of us are exempt from it. I don't care if you rent. If you rent, you're still paying property tax in that rent. So that's my suggestion, is to work with the borough and see where we can come up with that. Because if we have a regional, then we can, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can connect our sewer system into the regional, and then that will eliminate maybe our problem.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a market, if you will, right? So we know the plan needs to be valley centric, and so to shift what's going to Anchorage means that there's immediate demand and customers. So, and I appreciate the mayor and Crystal talking with the borough about bold plans like that, because that's how, that's how change is made, is if we can have those discussions and start to nail down what it might look like.
Ian?
Thank you. I just want to speak to Crystal about the rates. That's when we got to water, that's what I was asking. I was like, we haven't talked about rates in 11 years or something like that. But where I'm at is I'm going, I think we need a plan to say this is what needs to be done. This is where the water system needs to go to. And then when we go back to the customers and we say, hey, you've been good, you've been at these rates for a long time now, but this is what's wrong with the system and this is where it needs to get to. And so here's our justification as to why we're gonna be raising rates, however that might be. My gosh, what Zane said wasn't a terrible idea, a little bit harder because with the library and police department, they go, oh, look, there's a giant pretty building, for paying that sales tax, whereas everybody else is going, you're doing what with my money, putting it in the ground, you don't see anything. It's a little bit harder of a sell, but again, I'm not saying it was a bad idea because of that, but I definitely think, again, we're chomping here, going back to it, saying we need plans in place to tell us where we're going.
Madam Mayor? And I agree with Ian. I think we need to look at all options. The one nice thing about sales tax is that sales tax is paid by the majority of people that don't live in the city. You're capitalizing on everybody's money, which is pretty nice. Which, it was so nice the day that we kept the ribbon at the library and it was paid for, that the police department was paid for. And yep, a sewer treatment plant is not a very sexy thing, but we could paint it a pretty color. We could do landscaping, but it's it's just, I think we need to look at all options. I think nothing should be taken off the table. And I think the more that we can work with the borough, the more that we can think outside the box, the more it will benefit everybody. But in the meantime, because none of that stuff happens quickly, I want to make sure that we're taking care of what we have so we don't end up in trouble. So, Eric, looking at all the CIPs you have for sewer system, tanks, wastewater, let me kind of regroup here. If you take all of your projects here and revisit them, looking specifically at us having to deal with making sure we don't end up behind the 8 ball, because nothing's gonna happen quickly with the regional, but I think it's something we really need to work toward. Would you please go back before our next meeting and revisit your numbers and take a hard look at, because I know everybody wants, some projects are kind of wish lists, but some are been put in conservative. What can we get by with just this year? What can we hold back? Would you please, through the mayor, if this is all right with the mayor, just take another look at that. I think that will help the council with our priorities, if you wouldn't mind doing that.
For sure. And you'll also be receiving an update from our designers on the next meeting about the sewer treatment plant. So you're going to get an in-depth explanation of what we've been working on, what processes we see are over capacity. So you'll see this line up with those requests on why they're necessary and what the phasing is, what we have to do before the next, and that sort of thing. So I think you'll come away with a lot more understanding based on the numbers we pulled together with that program we're putting out there.
I appreciate that. I think that'll help everybody. And I know as much as we would all love to be done with this budget, these are some really important things that we need to look at before we finalize this. And maybe we should have talked more about it before we started the budget, but it's here now, and I'm sorry I let that cat out, and kind of hired to, corral cats. So I'm hoping that everybody in the council will really think about their priorities before we come back, and what we can cut, what we can hold off a year, what our priorities are to really fund. I'd love to do everything, but I just don't think that's feasible when we need to look at our infrastructure, so that's my spiel.
Cassie?
I do want to remind the council that in 2011, the former finance director Troy, he set up the fund stabilization requirement that we have. During that time, it basically allows us to have 50 to 60% of our money go into an unassigned fund balance, which sits in there for emergency purposes or for whatever needs we have. Anything over that 60% dollar amount goes into a committed fund balance for capital improvement projects. We have been dumping money in there for the last 14 years, and we have not taken a single dime out because we have been receiving revenue either through sales tax or investment income, and it's been piling through. And it's sitting currently roughly at about $36.9 million. And I'm actually kind of projecting it may end up even at 41 million at the end of this year. And so I just want to remind people of that because in the last about 5 years, I would say, it's the 5 years that I calculated, but I just want to verify it. Yeah, the last 5 years we've put in $35 million. That's how fast we've grown that fund balance through. And so I just want to make sure that you're aware that we do have money set aside for capital and it can't be used for anything else and only the council can move it out. And when we do transfer it, what happens is it turns around and then we have excess money at the end of the year and we move it back in. So it's a revolving door. It just keeps turning over and over. So I just want to make sure you're aware that there is money set aside for capital improvement for the general fund and for enterprise and for anything else, just so that you are aware.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate you sharing that with us, Cassie, because in all honesty, the way I have looked at this budget is we're bringing in $40 million this year and we're spending 64. That's what this, and I would think anybody off the street would pick this budget up and that's what they see. That's partly why I went back and looked at this as well, and this told me we have $65 million, and of that 65, we have $18 million that could be spent. So I'm going, okay, now we're up to $58 million. We're still short money. Where's it coming from, you know? And that was actually gonna be a question I was gonna ask at the end of tonight was how do we get some of these account balances? Because, I mean, I get it, it's not something kind of like the conversation with the whole detail. It's not something that's supposed to be included in here. But when we get the budget and you show me this is how much money we have sitting over here, and that obviously answered some of my questions here, that was a lot of the back and forth, is I've been wondering this entire time, how are we going to pay for this? You know, because from what I'm seeing, that there's nothing in here that tells me that. I mean, I looked at the audit, and again, but that was a snapshot from a year ago, and it's not the entire picture. So, I mean, through the mayor, if I could, I mean, is there something you could give us or show us that says, hey, this is kind of where things are sitting? You know, I don't know how you'd break that down.
You can't because of the way that we have our funds. It's literally 12 to 15 different funds, and I can't combine it to make it all in one.
Well, and I understand, like, you know, you've got your airport fund over here and your water fund and all the different ones, but, you know, when we say what's our savings account at, you know, like that to me is, I don't know. I mean, based on what this is telling me is it's $65 million, but we can only spend 18. And then I go, okay, great, we're gonna bring in another 40 this year. That's $58 million that we can spend, you know, and that's assuming we don't save anything at that point. So that's the numbers that I'm working with here and why I'm trying to grasp where we're at here. And I think looking at shaking heads here, that's kind of how everybody else felt as well.
Then why didn't anybody say anything? Why are we having conversation right now and 8 meetings later? Because that would help me tremendously to be able to tell you all that. I guess that's my problem. But I will try to fix the document up for the 12th to see if I can make it make sense for everyone. But
If you could just put something down that says, hey, you know, this is how much is here. I mean, obviously, I don't need the exact dollar amount down to the penny, but, you know, kind of some rough numbers saying, hey, this is what we've got here, this is what we've got here. I feel like there's something we could do that would help us grasp actually how much liquid money we have to spend. Not saying I wanna spend it all, just trying to grasp where we're at here.
Madam Mayor?
Nikki?
So simplified, Cassie, we have this 38 million or whatever that was. You think it's projected to maybe even be 40 million, that needs to be spent on capital improvements, right? Designated to be spent. And we have all these needs in capital. The money is there. It has to be spent, or we're gonna have to transfer it in and out or whatever. Maybe we should just be looking at, let's get some of these capital projects done while we have the money. I mean, that might be very simplified, I don't know, but it seems to make sense.
Madam Mayor, quick question to Cassie here. That 18 million, I think you might know what I'm talking about. Is that included in the 36?
No.
No, so it's technically, if we just use that as the example, it's 18 plus 37 that we technically have as cash that's
Correct.
can be spent towards capital expenditures. The 40 million we're bringing in this year is gonna help us run our city so we can pull the.
And then there are
3.
enterprises that have the net position that is on top of that.
Right.
So for instance, the water fund is has a substantial amount of net position sitting in it. And so it actually makes money. It doesn't usually have an operating loss when it runs. And so there is money sitting in there that will cover capital projects currently. And so that's how we've been funding it through the last couple of years, unless it's a huge, obviously a very large expense, so.
So my rough number says we have $58 million that could be spent on capital expenditures if we wanted to write a check tomorrow.
Should be spent.
That should be, I mean, we
Should.
can, doesn't,
Need.
I doesn't need to, I'm
Need
trying to be
is not
conservative
the
here, I
word I
like the
want.
minds, I would rather have a little bit of extra money sitting around, because again, we never know what tomorrow's gonna happen. I mean, look at what happened during COVID here. I mean, you never know what can go wrong, and I think that's sometimes people's problem is they overextend in the good times and find themselves in a bad spot in the bad times. And I think the city has done a very good job of getting ourselves in a good spot, previous councils and administrations. I'm not saying don't spend any of it, I'm just saying, hey, that's really great numbers to know. So we've got $58 million roughly that are sitting there for capital expenditures. That's basically new information to me.
Madam Mayor,
Kathy?
just like your budgets at home and your savings and your checking accounts at home, just because you have it doesn't mean you should spend it all. You don't want to deplete all your funds. But I think with the next meeting, when, you know, we hear more on the sewer system and things like that, that will give us a better idea of how much of this money we should put a priority to spending. It doesn't mean that we should fund every single thing in here. I think we need to be really smart with our decisions and careful with our decisions. But I think by next meeting, we're gonna have a better idea of what's available, what really needs to be spent in these big projects, you know, to keep us from having a lot of issues. There's, you know, things at the Menard Center, there's things in every department that needs funding. But we need to be smart about what should we focus on, what should we hold off on, what should we, you know, still do. And I think we'll have a better idea of that once we know more with the sewer next time. But I think that we should be careful about just depleting what we have.
Oh, yeah.
We can't spend ourselves into the poorhouse.
It's so hard to get
Mr.
out of there.
Graham,
Madam Mayor, I move to exit committee of the whole.
is there a second?
Madam Mayor, I'll second the motion.
We have, Mr. Graham has made the motion and seconded by Councilmember Crafton to exit committee of the whole. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is adopted. The time is 8:53. There's no,
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to postpone ordinance 2525 until the next regular scheduled meeting on May 12th.
okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Crafton. Is there a second?
Rubio seconds.
And seconded by Councilmember Rubio to postpone 25 until the May 12th meeting. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion's approved. There's no new business, so we will move directly to audience comments. There's nobody in the audience to comment, so we'll close it, bring it back to the dais. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So our last budget meeting on the books, my same spiel is May 12th. Does anybody want to do anything?
I thought we talked last meeting about scheduling one more.
But there was no direction from the body given to me. You want to, I mean, you can address it on the 12th. Your call.
How long's the agenda?
The 12th. You have a Stantec presentation,
Couple action
couple AMs, a set of minutes. To me, it's light. But, I mean, you could get into your stems, that could take 30 minutes easily.
I mean, I could see that conversation being an hour, honestly, because we're gonna then start talking about some of these amendments. I mean, I'd like to see a committee of the whole for that one, so it's a matter of like, hey, we know we're gonna have time to talk, instead of it being a presentation and then no time to talk. That's how I like seeing it. You did? Cool, thank you. Again, like I said, I think I said this last night, it's easier to cancel a meeting than it is to schedule a meeting. And so, we've got 34 amendments already. Are we gonna get through them all on Monday? Plus whatever also gets added?
Would the council be amenable to me just working directly with council to schedule the meeting and staff on some select dates? So right now, what I was thinking as of yesterday, I thought the 28th, 29th, Friday is the 30th of June. Those were the ones I threw out there. Of May. I'm sorry, yes, May, 30th of May.
That's what I like. That's what I thought I mentioned yesterday, was saying put a meeting on one of those days.
Do you want to look at your calendars and come back on the 12th and just give us direction on the 12th next week? Or do you want to email me or?
Does that sound good? Do you want to schedule something?
No, we'll wait till the 12th. Okay, that's all I have. We'll see you on.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, to Jamie, do we have any of the staff gone, like, during that time? So that, like, we need them. They're part of the team, just trying to make sure.
I can.
For the 28th and 29th?
If that's what we're looking at, we
Is
just
that
wanna
what
make
we're
sure.
looking at, Jamie?
So maybe an email would be a good way of doing that, you checking with them and then checking
And
back
then
with
we'll
us.
know by, is anybody gone between now and the 30th of May?
I'm gone all next week.
Oh, that's right. He's gone all next week.
And I'm gone all next week, so that's why it counts the 28th or 29th.
The 12th through the 16th, he's gone.
Oh.
Vacation.
For the tan.
Check on that.
We're grilling you when you get back.
2 weeks after that is just pure vacation.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
We have the meeting on the 21st for Title 16.
Yep.
Yep. So, okay, I'll wait. I'll figure it out.
Always do.
So if you're gonna be gone in that period of time, please email either me or Jamie.
Why don't we just say the 29th? It sounds like most people have confirmed at this point. So we're all sitting here.
Let Jamie do her job, she's better at it.
Saying, sitting right here.
Just got told.
Okay, Jamie, you done? Councilmember Crafton.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff and council. I think this is, I mean, if I were to rate like how good of a meeting this was, I would probably say this is one of the best meetings we've ever had. Just being able to have an open conversation, you know, we got our feels out, one might say, but I enjoyed the conversation. I think I've been telling Jamie since I first started here that we don't utilize committee of the whole as much as we should at times, and just give the council the ability to talk. especially with the administration, so we know where we need to go or what we need to do or how we feel about something. Sometimes there's just not that open line of communication. So really enjoyed this. I was hoping to start tackling amendments tonight, but doesn't sound like it. So there's plenty of time, but I appreciate all of you, and we'll see you on Monday.
Councilmember Rubio.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep it short and sweet. We did a great job tonight as a team, and that is what we are trying to do ultimately, is work together. Because it takes every one of us to create this and make the city better. So, love the effort tonight. And of course, we'll be back here Monday and the following Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever day, but we're gonna get it done.
Bring your cot with you. Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Once again to the staff, great meeting. But what really made this meeting and this discussion possible was the work that Cassie did at the direction of the council. You know, last year we had a different setup for the budget document. We had a very hard time getting through it. Very hard time having continuity with the discussions. This year, you know, you took what the council said to heart about what we needed to see and where we needed to see it. You've got the information right there, plain and simple. So, you know, you have enabled, you know, substantive discussions about the budget and about the future of the city. So thank you very much for everything that you did. One thing, however, is that you kind of screwed up the glossary here on the appendix section. Nowhere in here does it have the words "youans," "you guys," or "y'all." So maybe next year you could put that in there to make it a little bit more.
Hold on.
Hold on, exactly. Exactly.
So go from there. The discussion about the regional sewer with the borough is not a new discussion. Some of you may remember Helen Minoz, you know, who had a septic company based in Palmer. She was the largest borough ever under the saddle of the borough assembly and the borough mayor and the borough manager when it came to talking about regional sewer. Everything she said was true. You know, I had the opportunity to work with her on several instances and do a couple of different presentations to the borough, but you know, right now the borough is looking at cutting the mill rate as opposed to looking for ways to more effectively use the money that they've got there. So we need to replace Helen Munoz, not with a person, but as a group, as an assembly, and be that burr under the saddle if we want to come up with that regional solution sometime in our lifetimes. And I'm excluding Ian, of course. I'd like to get it done way before way before the end of your lifetime. But we need to continue to have that discussion and rekindle that fire and continue to be a hot coal for the borough to deal with. Also, I wanted to thank everybody that has come out and been working on citywide cleanup. That's been doing a great job. You know, different organizations doing different things, cleaning things up, even though, you know, it's not, you know, officially cleanup day or whatever. People getting out and working. The town's looking a lot better. It looks a whole lot better since we passed the plastic bag ordinance. But sometimes you just got to get up in the trees and get those Palmer plastic bags out of there. So go from there. And also, I want to remind everybody that the 10th, which is Saturday, the day before Mother's Day, is a very special day for our nation. You know, our nation was founded in 1776. The United States Marine Corps was founded in 1775. So the 10th of November will be the 250th anniversary of the United States Marine Corps. So if you have any Marines in your family, make sure you give them a call, say thanks. If you perhaps served with other Marines, then give them a crayon, tell them thanks. We really appreciate everything that you did. So thanks, guys. We'll see you on Monday.
Councilmember Velock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Great meeting. That's about it. See you Monday.
Councilmember Cottle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Stu, my grandson, is 4th generation Marine in my family. So we definitely know the days for the Marine celebrations. I just want to thank the administration and the council for humoring me by allowing me to initiate this conversation tonight. I think we don't have enough of these in-depth conversations. We have bits and pieces, but this puzzle is so huge. And we need more conversations like this. I think if we did have more conversations like this, we'd probably get through things a little bit quicker than we do. Do I wish we would have started this conversation sooner in this budget process? Yes. But I'm glad that we're doing it now, because I think we're gonna end up with a better budget than we would have had. I think we're actually gonna get more infrastructure and more projects done by having this conversation and setting our priorities. And I know that every time we ask questions, it puts more work on administration and on your departments, but thank you, Eric and Cassie, for, you know, the things that we asked for tonight that, you know, and you're gonna bring back to us next meeting. I think it will do nothing but benefit us in the long run. And we'll all end up with this united front as a budget and moving forward with the city. So I just thank everybody for their input, and let's keep this ball rolling.
Okay. All right, thank you all. I appreciate it. I think it's been a very productive conversation. And as Ms. Rubio says, this has been one meeting that has been teamwork, and I truly appreciate that. So with that, there's no further business